Hi guys, we're getting started here. Just a second, you guys gotta go first. Put you on the spot. Okay, we'll sign these after, but yep, you'll have to stand and repeat after me, so you don't worry about these yet, but okay, if you three wouldn't mind standing up and turning on your mics, we will go ahead and perform the oath of office. You want to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and then state your name.
I, John Kennedy,
Do solemnly affirm
do solemnly affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the laws and ordinances of the city of Seldovia
and the laws and ordinances of the city of Philadelphia
and of the state of Alaska,
and the state of Alaska,
and that I will faithfully and honestly
that I will faithfully and honestly
perform the duties of the office
perform the duties of the office
of the council member of the city of Seldovia.
of the council member of the city of Philadelphia.
Congratulations. Thank you, guys. You guys go ahead and sign.
Whoopsie.
All ready?
Ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, October 25th at 6 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Sweat,
Here.
Rojas,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
Swick,
Here.
Peyton,
Here.
Nathan.
Here.
Okay, we have everyone in attendance tonight, including our 3 new members. Welcome. If everyone will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Excuse absences, we have none. Agenda approval.
Make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda by Rojas, second by Sweat. All those in favor, Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy? Aye. Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. A council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of October 11th, 2021. And then we have 2 ordinances for introduction. 2A, ordinance 22-06, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code 6.08.050, availability of funds, and 6.08.070, execution of contracts. And then 2B, ordinance 22-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, amending Seldovia Municipal Code 15.18.080, maximum vessel length from 35 feet to 27 feet. Does any member wish to remove any of these items to discuss individually on tonight's consent agenda? Okay, we'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda by Sweat, second by Rojas. All those in favor, Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy. Aye. Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, tonight's consent agenda is approved. Mayoral proclamations, we have none tonight. Item G, public presentation, prior notice. Each presenter has up to 10 minutes. And looks like we have Kate Homan-Billmeyer with Wellspring Group Consulting tonight. Welcome, Kate. Heidi will get you the mic here.
Thank you. Okay. All right, can everybody see the screen here? Yes. Okay. Good evening. My name is Kate Homan-Billmeyer. I am co-owner and half of Wellspring Group Consulting, along with my husband, Caleb. We are tenants next door in Seldovia Space. We've lived in Seldovia, it'll be 10 years this spring. Our work at Wellspring, it focuses on community-based research, community engagement, program evaluation, and grant writing. I've been working in and with nonprofits and around grants and grant funding for nearly 20 years, starting in Washington, D.C., then in London, Nepal, and for the last dozen or so years here in Alaska. This presentation is an extension of a series of conversations that I've had over the last few years with fellow community members and most recently with the city manager. There are lots of questions about grants and grant funding. And I've been invited to give a short presentation to help answer some questions and to demystify a few things about grants. So I'm going to start in a place that you might not expect the presentation to start, and that is with strategy, because having a strong foundation is arguably one of the most important things that you can do to successfully position yourself for a grant award. It's just like anything worth doing. You need to invest in the front end to achieve results. Grants are incredible vehicles and well worth the time, energy, and resources, but having a plan is critical. My goal in the first part of this presentation is to help people really appreciate the importance of strategic thinking and planning, specifically around grants, and to be able to respond when constituents and community members use the very common refrain, let's just get a grant for that. So how many folks are familiar with funding strategy? It's important to know what the purpose of pursuing funding is before going down the path of seeking grants. Having a strategic funding plan is a critical and overlooked step in the process. A funding strategy is a roadmap. It's a strategic document that specifies what planning is still needed to position your organization for success and what grants to pursue and when. A funding strategy is the first step in thinking about how to fund a project or program. Preparing an application is the relatively easy part. The greatest challenge lies in researching what grants exist and which ones are worth our limited time and resources. It pays dividends to focus on the right grant opportunities. Determining what grants are right for your organization often requires reflection and refinement. This process can be a really positive tool for focusing limited resources and making sure you're working on what's most important for achieving your long-term vision. And it breaks any habit around chasing grants haphazardly. So a grant funding strategy has to be nested into a broader strategy and vision. This is the way to be most successful in approaching funding opportunities. What is the city's mechanism for prioritizing how it expends time, energy, and resources in pursuit of its goals? What are the criteria that the city has, for example, for guiding decision-making around grants? What are its priority projects? How, when, what, and why is it willing to invest in a grant? And where does it draw the line? These are important points of reflection that I would encourage honest and early conversation around. It can seem like grants are everywhere and it's just a matter of clicking submit. However, I can tell you from almost 2 decades of experience in the grant world that getting a grant is not like picking an apple from a tree. There are myriad criteria that you must meet in order to pursue funding. Probably the easiest and first is, what are the criteria listed in the RFP? Do you meet all eligibility criteria? The city can't necessarily pursue the same grants as a tribe or a nonprofit, just as tribes or nonprofits don't necessarily pursue the same kinds of funding as a city. So eligibility criteria is very important to assess when first considering a grant. Just because a local organization might have gotten a grant to support their organization doesn't mean that it's necessarily open and available to other entities in the community. So let's say that you are eligible. How does the opportunity fit into the goals and landscape of what's happening in your organization? Beyond eligibility criteria, what are the requirements of the funder? What is the funder telling you that you have to do in order to get funded? Does the grant require anything more than just a proposal? Does it require matching funding? Does it require a demonstration of a certain kind of community partnership or collaboration? Does it require other capital investments, a business plan, specific financial statements or specific financial scrutiny, proof of evidence-based approaches, proof of sustainability, certain types of education or training, or approved workspaces? These are all examples of the types of requirements that certain grants put forth. So it's important to know how the opportunity aligns with your overall strategic vision and mission. Don't chase a grant just because it's there, because sometimes what a funder requires doesn't align with the direction of an organization. And you might end up heading in a really different direction unintentionally just because of this funding opportunity and its requirements. And it can be really detrimental and costly to get so far off track. This happens a lot, and I've seen it. At some point down the line, you look up and say, how did we get here? So let's say you meet the eligibility criteria and it aligns with your strategic vision. It's well known that even if you meet all of the criteria, that doesn't automatically get you the award. Competition is fierce in some spaces for funding. For example, some highly competitive awards have a less than 5% award rate. Others are non-competitive and have a 100% award rate. It's important to know where you're willing to take risks and how competitive your proposal might be. It's also important to do the legwork up front to determine what kinds of projects have been funded in the past, what the award rate is, and how much money is available. There are several strategies to this, and that's part of the research phase that I mentioned earlier. So now that you've met the eligibility criteria, it aligns with your strategic vision, and you feel reasonably confident with the rate of success for the opportunity in question. What about this question of sustainability? Grants are project-based, which means they're time-based. A grant is not the only solution to every funding problem. If you're in need of a grant and get it, that's wonderful, but what comes next? How do you keep the change going? How does this grant open the door to more, better, different, or other funding? And if you get a grant to start something new, you need to know how you're going to sustain. There's an ethical dilemma behind getting a grant to fund a solution, but not having the capacity or plan or resources to keep it funded. So what happens at the end of the grant cycle? So we've talked about how to be thinking strategically about grants. Once you've got your funding strategy, you've narrowed your grant options down, it's time to write. It's costly to prepare grants, easily requiring 40 hours or more of effort. For federal grants, this number climbs to over 100 hours. It's important to be honest about what you are and are not willing to devote time and energy and resources to. Once you've gotten the grant, who will manage it? Who will evaluate the grant? Who will report on it? It's important to assess readiness to receive and implement a grant. It's not uncommon that organizations will apply for and be awarded grants that they don't always have the capacity to effectively implement. Ensuring that you have the capacity and resources to do what you say that you're going to do is incredibly important. Paying grant writers. This is perhaps the question that I hear most often. How do grant writers get paid? You need to pay grant writers just like any other consultant. You cannot pay them from the grant, and you cannot pay them only if a grant is successfully awarded. This goes against the ethics of both the Association for Fundraising Professionals and the Grant Professionals Association, and it's prohibited practice by both of these national professional organizations. Think of it like this. You wouldn't go to the Boardwalk or the Linwood and pay them for a burger only if it was delicious. You pay them regardless, because you're compensating them for the inputs of time, resources, skills, knowledge, and services, and their best efforts at making a delicious burger. It's the same thing for grant writers. You pay them for their time, their resources, their skills, and services, regardless of whether or not the grant is successful. Furthermore, generally accepted accounting principles, GAAP standards, state that fundraising services should be paid at the time services are provided. Very few grant awards are made immediately, and some can take between 6 months or more to be processed. Waiting until an award is received to pay for proposal writing services is unfair to the grant writer and can also ding your audit. Finally, it's important to remember
Minor technical difficulty.
it's important to remember that many variables impact grant making decisions, only one of which is how well the proposal is written. Success or failure does not lie in the hands of the proposal writer alone. So, takeaways. It's rare to find a grant to do exactly what you want to do. More often, you have to assess how your idea fits within the grant opportunities available. Think about it as a puzzle. How does this fit into your larger strategic vision? Use your vision, mission, goals, and priorities to drive your strategic planning and community planning efforts. Develop decision-making criteria from that around grants to determine what kind of opportunities you want to pursue, and also when you don't want to pursue something. It will help immensely when there are competing interests and opportunities in front of you. Sometimes the strategic decision is to wait and not to pursue a grant just because it's there, either because it doesn't align with your criteria or because you're not ready. Waiting until you have a fully developed idea that can compete is the best use of your resources and your time. And finally, be prepared to invest time, energy, and adequate resources to grants. This includes the development of a grant, the implementation of a grant, the monitoring and evaluation of a grant, reporting, and the closing down of a grant, and what they all mean for existing and future capacities. Grants are amazing tools when they fit into a vision and when they're well executed. It's the prep work that makes a world of difference. It's similar to building a house. You want to have a solid foundation on which to build from, and it's worth the time and resources to build that solid foundation. I'm really grateful to be able to share this space with you and have this conversation. I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions here or offline.
Thank you, Kate. Any questions from council this evening? Yep, go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I have more of a comment than a question. So thanks for coming, because I did learn a lot. I think I've heard that statement made numerous times, well, let's just get a grant. And although I certainly don't know about grants, I figured it wasn't that easy, you know. And then when you and I talked, I asked you that question about, you answered it very, and it certainly makes sense, you know, about paying a grant writer. So I think it was a really good presentation, and I appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
George?
Yeah, do appreciate your time and your information. I would ask, who says we can't do this on a contingency basis? We can hire a lawyer on contingency. Why can we not find a grant writer to write a grant? Who says that we can't do that?
You certainly can, but it's not best practice. I think it would
Okay,
be
all right.
between,
There is no legal problem with
there
doing that.
isn't a legal, it's just generally that most grant writers I know wouldn't enter into a contract with that being the stipulation of payment.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Kate, I have a quick question for you. Just in your experience over the past 20 years in grant writing, what's the like the rate of success, if you will, like, for example, yourself? I mean, I don't know if you're willing to share that or not, but is it, how often for your efforts are you rewarded in the grant world?
I think it's wildly variable. I think there are many factors that go into determining the success of an award. I think, again, just the amount of funding available, what the funding body is, if you meet the criteria. I have been involved in other grants or seen other people be involved in grants where they left off, they wrote a stellar proposal and left out one piece of supporting documentation and would not be reviewed as a result of that. And so there are lots and lots of different reasons, variables that are out, like I mentioned, outside of the grant writer's control. So it's hard to say, any one person's rate of success, just because grants are so different between philanthropic grants, state, federal, local community grants. There are just so many different criteria to meet.
Yeah, and that might not have been a fair question to ask. I mean, I knew that might have been a little bit loaded there. So appreciate your response, though. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, John?
I have one question. The award rates for the grants, the different types of grants, is that something that's available to the people that might be seeking these grants?
Yes,
So we can tell what grants we might be more successful with than others?
that's correct. So you can do simple math on it. Another strategy is to, if you hire somebody to do a funding strategy, or you have the capacity within your staff to do funding research, you might call a program officer and have a conversation about types of successfully awarded projects or proposals in the past. And you might have, again, one of those decision-making criteria, for example, might be, this year we only go after awards that are higher than a 50% success rate.
That's what
for
I was getting
example.
at. Maybe we could go for something that might have to be more successful the first few times around.
Yeah, and that's entirely up to the conversation
Okay.
and where you want to take risk. But yes, that information is generally available either through the RFP or by calling a program officer or doing some background research.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Mhm.
Thank you, John. Anyone else with questions or comments for Kate?
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yes, I'd like to thank Kate for coming on to the meeting and sharing with us what she does for a living. And I think many points that she brought up are very informational that we as a council need to consider when we may direct the city manager for grants. So thank you very much for your presentation. It had great information in it and good information for us all to look at in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Bobby, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, Kate, I have do you write grants?
We do, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone from the public who has a wish to ask a question or provide a comment?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Kate, thank you. Appreciate the information and your presentation tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, looks like nobody else has signed up for item G. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Anyone from the public?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a Miss Laurel Hiltz.
Okay,
Hi, Mr. Mayor, if you can hear me okay?
yep, got you loud and clear, Laurel.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Well, hey, I just wanted to welcome our new council members and thank you all for your willingness to serve, and look forward to seeing you in the dais there for some years to come. That's great. And wanted to thank the city council and the city and the Seldovia Boardwalk Hotel for the nice community event and the meet and greet opportunity. And I just got to say the chicken and bacon, that was awesome. So Angela, amazing, shout out to her. I did want to say just a reminder about some events coming up here at the end of the month. So on Friday, we'll have the community Halloween Carnival. It's going to take place at Seldovia Village Tribe in the Alaska Tribal Cache Building. That's Friday night from 6 to 8 p.m. It's open for all ages. We're going to have free hot dogs, chili, apple cider, coffee, and all types of games and prizes, and the opportunity to buy some raffle tickets to win some fun items as well. So we just hope that everyone will come out, have a great time, and it's really intended for all ages, and especially for us to have a chance to get to see the kids and enjoy them having a lot of fun. So that's going to be Friday night, 6 to 8. And then on Sunday, Halloween day itself, we're going to have community trick-or-treating taking place. The trunk or treat is going to start at 4 o'clock at Main Street Market. And we think we'll see some of those younger kids in those earlier hours. So starting at 4. And then it sounds like a lot of businesses are going to have treats for the kids along Main Street and of course around the area. And then the chapel will have their annual harvest party, starts at 5 o'clock, and everyone's invited, and it includes dinner and activities and lots of candy. And Melanie Horde makes a pretty awesome funnel cake. So I can recommend that. And then I've heard somewhere that the Linwood's having a Halloween party, and I'm not sure if it's that night or which night, but those are just some of the things that are coming up this weekend. And then starting in November, the first Thursday of the month is the chamber meeting. And so we just always look forward to what is going to take place at a chamber meeting and the plans for supporting business and marketing the great community that we live in. So look forward to that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Laurel. Appreciate that. Anyone else, Heidi, from the public?
Not seeing any more hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, anyone in the audience? Any additional comments, questions? Nope. Okay. All right, we'll move on. Let's see, item 8, item I, committee and advisory board reports. I don't see any listed for this evening. Item J, administrative reports. Looks like we have the first report up tonight. Will be the finance report on your regular packet on page 16.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the council. Can you hear me?
Yep, got you loud and clear, Jan.
Okay. So yeah, we have a narrative report starting on page 16, and then after that is kind of that one-page financial summary that we're still in the process of developing. Just a couple notes on the finance report with AMLIP. I think, as you know, in the past, that's been kind of one single account, and we've just sort of identified part of that as being the permanent fund and the rest is being unencumbered. And we are working on separating that into individual funds, the permanent fund, the major maintenance and repair funds, the ARPA funds, which is the American Rescue Plan Act funds are currently being held there, the cemetery funds, et cetera. And so it's a way to hold those funds a little more separate from everything else rather than everything being in kind of one big melded pot. And so just a better tracking. And so we're still working on that. And so under AMLIP, you see some notes referred to that. And then, as you, I think, are aware, in the recent year or two, our rate of return on AMLIP has been greatly reduced. And so, as you can see on the last bullet point there under AMLIP, in about approximately a week or 2 weeks, I guess, the Alaska Permanent Capital Management Company will be presenting to the council on some different alternatives as to ways that we can maybe do better on that investment. Looking down at the other funds, General fund, you can see 49% of projected revenue has been accrued, even though we're only, a quarter of the way into the year. A big part of that is that in the late summer and early fall is when we tend to see our largest returns in terms of sales tax, property taxes, et cetera, from the borough. And so that kind of forward loads that bit of the revenue. That also reflects the fact that our cap funds, the capital assessment, or the revenue sharing has been received. Our expenditures to the general fund are running at about 32%. So a little bit higher than we'd like to see at this time of the year. And I'll address that a little bit in just a minute. And then you can see within the general fund, kind of the breakdowns as to where we're at for expenditures. One new thing, again, you see this year is that the multipurpose building is broken out into its own class, even though we do sort of include it with public works. But that just helps us better track the expenses for that building. And that includes not only heat and electricity, but it also includes phone and internet and those things. Most of the October invoices are entered. There are still a few outstanding, so it's not quite a representation of the full quarter's expenses, but it's fairly close. And then all of the October payroll is included, and so that's always our biggest monthly expense for the general fund. Water revenue fund, you can see again, we're still running a little bit ahead in terms of expenditures, but our revenues are also running ahead. Very similar picture for the sewer. And of course, those two funds usually mirror each other pretty closely. The dock revenues fund, we're at about 38% and 32%. But the only area that our expenditures are currently higher than our revenues is the harbor of Jackaloff. That's largely because a large percentage of the revenue for the harbor, of course, is in the form of the annual mortgages, which will not go out until the end of the third quarter of the fiscal year. And so that's why we're not seeing that. Boat haul out, you can see, is running pretty well ahead of, revenues ahead of expenditures. Again, that's fairly anticipated. Obviously, all the boats that came out of the water at the end of the season contributed to that. And then we expect to not see much action there, as you know, for about 6 months until the boats go back in the water. Let's see. In terms of grant funding, the SMOLT project, this is a grant that's been kind of sitting there static for quite a while. The original focus on this grant was on reintroducing some coho smolts into the local system, and that's been stymied by the fact that there weren't smolts available for purchase. We submitted a change request several months ago and heard no action on it. And finally, we did a little poking the last couple of weeks, and that did result in approval to change the species focus from coho to Chinook. And I think that City Manager Friedlander will address this a little bit more in her report. ARPA, as you know, there are no expenses yet, since we don't have a spending plan for those grant funds. They're just sitting in the account. We're not touching those. Senior meals is just about right on track, sitting at 24% of grants expended for the year. So that's kind of the funds. And so I said that I was going to address a little bit of the fact that we're running a little bit ahead of where we'd like to be for the year. And part of that is the insurance payments that we've already made. We have a property and liability insurance cost for the year of approximately $96,000. And on our payment plan, we paid half of that initially, and then we've made two additional payments of that. And so when just out of curiosity, I looked at if we amortize that across the 12 months instead, where would we be at for our spending? And it's a little bit lower. We'd be at 28.9%, and that includes both the general fund and the special revenue funds. And so as we pay down that balance on the insurance, and then by the end of the third quarter, we should be finished with that. We should start to see those come back into balance a little bit. In terms of the notes, as you know, we are still working with Carmen Jackson's CPA agency up in the Valley to finalize some of the prep for the FY21 audit. We have done some preliminary work with them, gotten some things back into line for analysis, but they are currently fairly busy with some of the projects that are on a really tight deadline. And so that is a little bit on hold, but we are hoping that by the end of October, that their other projects will be done, and starting in this next month, we'll be able to really focus their attention on us and get that squared away so that we're all ready for the audit, which is currently the 3rd to the 7th of January. As I mentioned earlier, the community assistance programming or community assistance program funding has been received. And so that has been allocated to the different funds according to the FY22 budget. The Harbor Kiosk Capital Project, that actually is somewhat broken down in the report that's on the next couple pages. Obviously, there hasn't been any action on that in FY22, so there's not much to report, but it is included in a little bit more detail. Yeah, I think that's kind of the end of my comments. As you know, we submitted our FY22 budget to the Government Finance Officers Association. We are hoping to get some good feedback on the budget and some good constructive commentary from that, but have not heard that yet. And then also, as I believe City Manager Friedlander addresses in more detail in her report, we are still waiting to hear from the Kenai Peninsula Borough in terms of exactly what we need to do to put the sales tax increase into effect now that it has been passed by the voters of the city. And I am open to questions.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Any questions, comments from council this evening?
The mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead.
So for our new council members, we have the main staff members come every quarter to give a presentation to the council. So the finance officer is here not just for this latest report, but she can answer questions for the past 3 months as well. And so that goes for the other staff as well. So we'll have Public Works Operator Cameron here, then we have Chief Hawkins here as well, and the city clerk. And so it's just a chance to give council question time with the staff because they don't attend every meeting. So just wanted to make sure that you knew this was your time for questions.
Thank you. Okay, yep, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, Jan, do we have any numbers yet from the sales tax we collected this summer, or is it too early?
I don't have those figures off the top of my head. But we do have, I believe we've received through August sales tax. I cannot remember right now if we've received September's yet or not. And they've been running a little bit ahead of projections, if I remember correctly.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. Do you know how it compares to past summers? Maybe we can get a report on that when it all comes in.
Yeah, I do not know off the top of my head how it compares. I'd have to pull those previous years and run an analysis to tell you that, but I could certainly try and have that ready for possibly the next meeting.
Well, you don't have to go really that far in depth. Just, I mean, you should be able to tell, you know, from the numbers how it was compared to last year and the year before that. I would just be curious because we all are thinking it was a really, really busy summer. So I'd like to see, you know, how that went with the sales tax. So when you get a chance, thanks.
Yeah, I can just offer a quick comment. So for those people that file quarterly, the July, August, and September return, which is the biggest one, isn't due until a couple more days. It's due October 31st. So that's the bulk of the summer, the big amount of the summer sales that you'll see. So there's a pretty significant lag. And then by the time the city even receives by the time the borough gets it, they audit it, do their thing. And then I would imagine it's probably at least another 2 2 to 4 months, maybe even longer, before the city receives their numbers and the actual dollars.
Well, yeah, I'm not asking
So-
for it right away, you know, I'm just curious to see how it panned out with last year and the year before
Yep.
is all. So when all those numbers are in, I'd just like to kind of see it on paper.
Okay, any other questions, comments for the finance officer? Okay, thank you, Jan. Okay, the next one up is Chief of Police report in your packet on page 20.
All right, so what you guys are seeing here is just the monthly report. I'll give you a quarterly overview. I did have to write down some notes, so this is from the last, Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, thanks. Sorry, so this will be the quarterly report for the last 3 months, and so really just over the last 3 months, obviously, what we're seeing is the decline in the calls, but what I've been noticing, and it's really kind of hard to track, is the time spent on the calls seems to be about the same. So what we were getting a lot of call numbers during the summer wasn't as much time as I'm still spending more time, it seems like, on the calls that seem to be coming in lately. But that's okay. That's good. It's also learning. Also, I wanted to let you guys know, if you didn't know, that starting in November 1st, the end of this month will be 1 year. So this is kind of like a yearly report too. I'll just give you a brief thing of what's happening. I wrote down this stuff too, so I want to keep myself on track, but I just let you guys know that hopefully there's going to be a lot more changes and a lot of good. I've seen a lot of growing, a lot of learning, a lot of things that have happened over the last bit with trials and stuff that have happened. Hopefully we're going to see even better things that are going on. We got a grant for a computer, and it's not just a computer. And when you guys heard about this in the last one, but for you guys new ones, it's also software and stuff, which will help me in the police department be able to speed up the process. What took hours, what will take a couple hours to write before was days, because I would have to send papers back and forth. They wouldn't get submitted correctly because almost everything now is done on computers, and they're sending them through, and it's a report system, and we're getting that new report system in. That is something with this grant that we're getting. It's going to be really nice, and it's going to help speed things up a lot. Not only am I going to be able to do that, I'll be able to get information, request information, share information, and it'll put me on board with the troopers and a lot of other agencies too. So this is a good thing that we're going to be happening. That's what I hope to see in this next year, just at the start. And I think with these kind of changes, I see a lot of good and a lot more progress that we'll have here at the sheriff's office, or sorry, the police office. I'm so used to that, saying that, but you'll see a lot of good things, I think, with this. Also with this new tower, hopefully I can link phones and be able to run stuff right then. So it'll be instantaneous. It'll be really nice to be able to do that kind of stuff, where we haven't been able to do that before, where we even lost radio service and cell phone service. And so it's really hard to communicate back and forth. And if you guys don't understand, sometimes when you've got people and you need to know information right then, it makes it really difficult to be able to do all that stuff. I hope like I said, there's been a lot of good things, a lot of trials, a lot of learning, and I hope that within the next year that I be able to continue and grow and be able to serve the city of Seldovia. Any questions for what we've got? I mean, that's just a brief thing, but we've got a lot of changes coming up.
Good, thank you. Any questions, comments from council for the chief?
Well, I have a question
Yep.
again, I guess. You said something, I thought you said this is a report for 3 months.
It's 3 months, but I'm giving you an overview because it's been a year now that I've been here. So I was just giving you also a kind of a year. Starting November 1st will be 1 year.
But you've got monthly reports.
I do a monthly report every time that's turned in.
So these calls are for the month?
That's just for 1 month.
Oh, okay, that you just said for 3 months.
Yes, I return in a report every month. That's what you guys see every month. I give a quarterly verbal report over 3 months, but I don't have
Oh,
that information.
I
with
see,
me.
I get you. Yeah. We'll just,
Okay.
my brain, doesn't.
No, that's
function-
okay.
doesn't
But so
function
what you're
well.
seeing, the call numbers you're seeing right there is just for this last
For the
month.
month, okay,
You guys in the month before have got the other call numbers, and I guess we could put those together for a quarterly time. Well, I submit them in, so I don't have it. What, I can report them in, but I just submit them every month.
okay, thanks.
I have a question.
Yes.
How are things going with the your relationship in the troopers, and then in terms of our call volumes with folks that live outside of the city? I mean, I know we had some pretty rough go there for a while. Are things improving? People getting used to calling the troopers? Are they still trying to get a hold of you, or how's all that been going?
The relationship, I'll start out with the relationship with the troopers, has been going really good. We've been sharing calls back and forth. It's actually starting to turn out, and we're starting to work through those problems that we had. Still got a lot to go with that, because every call is so unique. We can't say exactly this call, like divide them up into perfect categories. They're so unique in every call, but the call volume out the road has gone down. But we have seen, I was asked this question by the city manager, the call volume. I said, yes, the numbers have gone down, but because of they having me focus more on the more significant, the emergency calls kind of sort of thing, that it actually, my time hasn't gone down out there.
Gotcha.
Because usually if they're calling me, it's something that's big. So it requires more investigation and more time spent on it. So it seems to be doing better. We're working, the citizens, I still get people that will come from out, with basic stuff that I have to refer back to the troopers, and sometimes it's received well and some it's not. I mean, it's just still a learning experience, and I think it's just taking time. So it's a growing experience.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, we knew that was going to be the case, and I think that's all we can do. We know what, we know our amount of obligation and what our resources, what we have, what we're responsible for, and then what the troopers are responsible for. So I think it's just going to be a matter of people understanding, what they need to do and who they need to call. And then, of course, with when the call goes to dispatch, hopefully it gets routed correctly. So
one of the big things that I've seen, and I've had people comment, and I think they're the ones that is, well, you don't have authority outside of the city. And I have to explain to them, actually, I have authority through the whole state. The city has asked me to focus my attention, unless it's an emergency call, in the city. So that's kind of what we have to work through, is that kind of process. I can make arrests anywhere in the state. I have authority through the whole state, but my focus is here because I'm hired through Sylvania City.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for clarifying how many calls are out the road, because the number is significantly down. And so I do hope those numbers are, it sounds like, important issues. Are you able to say how many ongoing cases you have, not what they are, but are you in the middle of carry-on cases that you work on a regular basis until they're finished? Is there a number that you could give out, if there are any?
I don't have those numbers right now. And with some of them, and the way the town is kind of small, I don't think it's appropriate right now to give out those numbers, because it might be a important case, and it's probably not something I would put out to people if I have ongoing stuff.
Okay, yeah, for me, that puts in my mind what duties you have, as far as if you have ongoing cases, of 3 ongoing cases, well, that's time that you need to be spent working on those, plus your other duties, but that's okay, that's fine. I think it's also clear to understand that the cases out the road, or the people out the road, is just as important as people inside the city limits, because we do sign a contract with the state troopers. So just clarifying that a little bit, and I think with all the meetings we've had, I think you're now right on board with that, and we're moving forward with the contract and the city limits, folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Any questions or comments from the public for the chief?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. We'll move on to the next one. Item J3, Harbor Master's Report, and that'll be found on page 21 of your packet.
And Mayor, as shared at the last meeting, the harbor master is at a conference. The agenda actually for the conference is included with her report. So she is not here in person, but we do have her report starting on page 21. And at the request of Councilmember Rojas, the harbor master attempted to also incorporate time estimates for when upcoming maintenance work could occur. And of course, the harbor master, as she says, she's still in the works of compiling and figuring out prices. And her work is also contingent upon the schedule of the Public Works and Maintenance Department and the weather. But this is overall to give council a snapshot of upcoming maintenance work. And then if you go to the harbor website on the city webpage, uploaded there is the technical report that was produced in 2014 from the Denali Commission and the Army Corps to show the remaining phases of the harbor work that still needs to occur. We were able to accomplish, I believe, just phase one, maybe a little bit of the next phase. But the harbor master, as well as RADSI, they're looking at that information as well as the harbor fee schedule to see if our rates are corresponding not just with operational costs, but also upcoming capital projects that the city has had in the works for quite some time. So that's available on the website if the council would like to see a more in-depth review of major capital projects that would take other sources of revenue, such as grant funding, to help make happen at the city.
Thank you, Rachel.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Anyone?
may ask a question.
Yep, go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Diane. Nope, you're
Yeah,
good. You're perfect timing.
Okay, thank you. I guess when I was looking this over and I read it over, and it may be coming more, but I guess where I'm not sure, I didn't see it unless somebody else can point it out to me. I don't see on here the beams down in the harbor itself. When you walk through there, there's boards that are split. They look like they need to be replaced. Is that on here somewhere? And it doesn't look like it'd be, I mean, they're obvious to the eye. There's some 8x8 lumber that needs to be replaced, and then planking. Is that in this report? If not, I guess I didn't see it, but to me, that's something so obvious and dangerous that it's something that needs to be addressed. And if we need to, our public works is generally pretty well swamped. If we need to, with that, the money that we put through to major maintenance in the different departments where we took some monies that we had, maybe we could hire that out, because when I go through there and I see lumber timbers that are just chalky and rotten, to me, that's very unsafe. But if someone could point it out, maybe not tonight, but maybe it's coming in the next report. I didn't quite see that where it says anything about replacing planking or whatever those 8x8s that run alongside as you're walking down the finger, whatever those things are called. But just something I would like to have addressed either the next time our harbor master is with us, and maybe we can just hire that out and get that taken care of before the weather becomes too bad. But it's pretty obvious, and to me, it needs to be addressed sooner than later. Thank you.
Yeah, Vivian, I don't think those specific, there are a number of items on here for the main floats and stuff, not specifically those, the planks and the bull rail that you're referring to. So yeah, and full disclosure, she does say it's ongoing. So I'm sure, hopefully it'll be expanded upon on the next report.
Okay, thank you.
But I do agree, if it's if there is an immediate safety issue, that probably needs to get elevated to the top of the list and get into either our guys are going to have to deal with it, or like you say, we make a decision and get it hired out and get it fixed. I think the city manager heard us on that one. Any other questions, comments for in regards to the harbor report tonight?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, George.
Also, where are we about fixing the parking lot so we can charge for we hashed that over and over and over, it seems like, and I don't see anything here talking about actually doing something to make that happen. If we're going to have this for next summer, we need to be thinking about it. pretty close to now. Where are we with that? I see something about parking lot here, monitoring the parking lot or something.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Nathan, we're going to have another discussion about that at a future meeting. I, off the top of my head, can't recall where we left that meeting and what additional information the council had, but I think we ended that meeting with, we have more discussion to make happen for it.
And that was in regards to the paid parking, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, I'm sure that one's gonna come back up here soon. Okay, any other questions, comments from council in regards to the harbor report tonight? Okay, anyone from the public with comments or questions on the harbor report?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. All right, next report, item J4, Maintenance Public Works Report. This will be in your packet on page 30.
And Mayor, I believe, although we see on the participants list, Cassidy Cameron, I believe that's actually Jordan who's available to address the council on his report.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Jordan, loud and clear.
Since Public Works and Maintenance doesn't normally present a quarterly report, and I don't really familiar with the format or whatever you guys are interested in inquiring on or knowing about, I don't have a copy of my report with me, so I'm not going to read it to you. I can't. But what are you guys looking for in the way of information?
Basically just an update on, yeah, we've got your written report here, Jordan. Just, you want to give us just a quick overview of what you guys have been primarily focusing on here going into the fall, early winter season here?
All right, yeah, since we've taken on Johnny Gruber and John Kuhn, those guys in the maintenance department have focused mainly on yard cleanup at this time, because it's just many years of growth and garbage laying around, and so the guys have been working on that for the better part now of 2 months. John Kuhn's, a little showed up a little later, and but he's motivated enough that we have him kind of on his own doing brush removal, and he was focusing on the storage yard, but he's been redirected to the septic tank down by the boat storage, and which is good. It'll be a good thing to have as much brush removed as possible, so that maybe in the next year, the brush removal project will be out of the way, so that we can do sludge removal when that is budgeted in and ready, and the tribe's ready for us to accept or SNAs accept the sludge. But otherwise, Johnny, he's kind of on the maintenance department for the water turn-offs and ons, and he's been on the ground, shutting waters off for this fall, and he's the ground man for assisting on the boat haul outs, and so we've hauled a lot of boats and placed them in the yard. I haven't counted how many we've pulled from what we had set out in the spring, but the yard's looking pretty full already, even and there, as time goes along, more boats are showing up, so it's good to see the boatyard is filling up. And Johnny had done some brush removal and tidying up in the yard, in the storage yards, which has helped immensely in putting the boats away and all that, and finding finding blocking and all that stuff. But yeah, that's what they've been focusing on. They have started the boiler replacement for the multi-purpose building, and the old one's removed and the new one needs to be set down inside the building, and it'll be a lot of work to get a 780-pound boiler down the stairway and through the little doorway, and in place, and so that one's been kind of delayed, but it'll be ongoing. And but in the water treatment world, things are going good. We're distributing about 56 to 57,000 gallons a day, and I've had 24-hour readings back to back within a couple hundred gallons of each other. The usage is real steady, and we're still on a aggressive regimen on the filters, weekly filter backwashing, and seems to be we're getting a lot better results. Our filter runs we're having a lower turbidity overall during the course of the week, and that's good. It's good to not have any breakthrough at the end of the week. The filter is still good to filter, but we rotate every week if it needs it or not. And we're still learning if that's what suits us, but at this point it seems like it's working really good. We're able to keep track of the flow rates through each individual filter a lot better when you're only running one. You don't have to divide flow between two filters. It's a lot more precise, and so our flow is up, but our usage is down. So we're able to still keep our flow through the filter, and which reduces mud balls. And that's we're still kind of digging our way out of mud ball city, and I don't know if you can actually totally reverse it. So, that one of the things that we'll just have to learn as time goes along, if we can totally remove all the mud balls, or if we're just in a pattern of just breaking them up, as best we can, and maintaining what we have left. It's something that you can ask around, and you get a lot of questions back. I think each plan is individual, and so what we know is actually more than some of the other guys know about our plan. Anyhow, we have some other projects in mind. We're going to do some little more extensive maintenance on the equipment for the fall, which includes some valve adjustments or inspections on the engines. We're going to open them up and make sure that we're not going to burn valves. Some other maintenance outfits don't believe in it, but I'm a firm believer that we need to check the valves every once in a while, every couple thousand hours, have a look, see what's going on. And so when we pull the grader in and put the muffler that we've been missing so much back on, we'll also have the valve cover off and do an inspection, make sure the engine's going to not have any surprises. We've got the hydraulic ram in for the driveway gate, so we're going to reinstall the driveway gate for this winter, and we're going to be able to carry snow with the grader. It's going to be a lot more efficient, and with Johnny Gruber running it, it should be a nice, a pretty good machine to have on the streets. And then the other equipment is kind of just only needs an annual maintenance, and then they'll be prepared for the winter. The backhoe, we're going to procure chains for it, and it'll be ready for lighter duty. It's intended to be used on the boardwalk on occasion. It's going to, of course, be kind of a touch and go deal on that because it's so narrow down there. You're almost better off running a snow blower down there, but nobody wants to run a snow blower down the street. So we're gonna use the backhoe. And then, we'll maybe be able to have, John Kuhn in as a rotating operator, with Johnny or myself. And, we're gonna kind of have an advantage this winter with having 3 operators. We'll be able to, even with the reduced hours of 2 guys, we'll be able to be a lot more efficient with having 3 operators available to push snow. So there's a list of other things. Harbor has a list of maintenance items. Some things are kind of capital expenditure related, larger projects. Some are smaller maintenance items. I think we're going to end up having to go out to Jack Loft and replace some pins before that breaks apart and becomes an issue in the middle of the winter. It's stuff we already own, but we have to go out there and it'll be a project to get, guys out there and reposition the pins and fit them and all that business. It's been done. It's routine, but it needs to be done. So that's what we've been focusing on. There's a litany of other things that we've intended on doing, and I think a lot of them are going to have to be postponed for the winter. As maintenance goes, we're looking towards fall and winter, and getting the machines ready to push snow and things put away for the winter. We've winterized a lot of things that need to be put away, and hopefully we can receive our material for the awning at the city office and get a piece of material up there to help hold the roof up before that becomes a train wreck. It's fixing to become a real problem soon enough if we don't get that material in and get some sort of fix on that awning. So I don't know what other, any of you guys have any questions that could help me. It'd be good to find out what you guys are thinking.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. Any questions, comments, George?
Do we have a report on the status of the roof at the Sylvia Fuels? I was under the impression that you folks were gonna undertake that repair. Is that correct?
I think it's in your report.
Yeah, through the mayor, council member Nathan, I have it in the manager's report.
Okay.
We haven't had the capacity so far with staff in-house to do those repairs. So the admin assistant, Diane Gruber, has called around to 7 local businesses here, as well as reaching out to businesses in Homer. And no one still has the time to do that work. So I've let Fuel and Lube know that that's the status, and we've been trying because it's a big, important project that we need to make happen. But in talking with operator Gruber, he has some ideas for how we can temporarily fix the roof to get us through the winter and spring. So that way, when the weather improves, hopefully we've positioned ourselves so that we have someone, or we have the capacity in-house to do that work ourselves and have the material ordered. And the awning at the city office, we were working on getting materials for that for months. There was, I don't know if it was a material shortage or a supply chain disruption, but I think since the summer, even before, we had been trying to get the metal, quotes even for the metal, and operator Cameron can talk about that. No one would return his phone calls. So it was only till very recently that we got the materials, which is why that project's moving forward. But we've had that in the works for a significant amount of time before we knew about the Fuel and Lube roof.
Very good. Thank you. I had one more quick one, if it's all right.
Yep, go ahead.
Are we not, Jordan, are we now keeping maintenance records on all the equipment, just documenting the services and the parts changes or whatever we're doing maintenance wise to the equipment? Are we keeping those records now?
Well, yeah, we've, at this point, we haven't really serviced any of the equipment yet, but that's the intention is that when we do our services, we have a couple logbooks that Jonathan had left at the shop from Caltrans that, he left, I think 3 of them for the machines. And then we can make a note in there of what work we've done to them.
Super.
At this point, it's just kind of, they're just being used at this point. I've been working on one of the vehicles and I don't know if, those smaller vehicles, if we need to keep track of that, you spent almost $500 on a tune-up for that car. It's amazing how expensive tune-ups are anymore. And I can't even imagine what it would be if we were to send that car to Homer for that tune-up, what that would cost. I'm fairly certain it would probably be about $1,500 or more. So, but the fuel company roof, that building, that, is very good, very well construction, and it's galvanized, but the skylights are fiberglass, and the issue with that thing is that it's all kind of an obsolete construction, and so we can't just go and buy material to fix the leaking skylights. Either we'll have to have something custom made that will fit in there, a piece of sheet metal will have to be made to fit down in there to take place of the skylight, or we're going to have to just take tar paper and wanes or something like that and put a hot mop goop patch over the fiberglass, which, is not going to really hold the test of time. But, we're kind of, there's some options, but at the same time, it's got to shed water. So the way it's got to overlap in the narrow sections of those roofs, we're going to have to, I feel like we're going to have something made that's going to last. It's either that or you're going to have to replace the roof, which I don't think is anybody's, nobody's keen on replacing an entire, an $80,000 roof for 12 leaking skylights. But I think it'd be nice if we could get some inquiries so that there could be some other ideas. I just see it as we need to make pieces that replace the skylights that fit, that, won't leak. But, it's kind of hard to deal with a building that's over 50 years old and, and it's not, that type of material isn't being used anymore in this area.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions, comments from council? John?
Hi, Jordan. It's John Kennedy. I just wanted to thank you and the gentleman out there for all the hard work you're doing. I know it's kind of, it's one of those things that I think often gets overlooked, and I appreciate the fact that you gentlemen are beginning to use the permanent equipment maintenance records. But in addition with that, I would like to, I need a little bit of time to present some ideas regarding that to both the council and the city manager. But there's a lot more to that program than just what's currently being done. And I don't think it'll cost us a whole lot of money, but it'll also help us if we ever have some type of safety incident, and also make it safer for you folks working out there. So anyway, again, thank you for your time.
Thanks, John. Anyone else from council?
I have one.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
Hey, I just
Mr.
wondering,
Mayor.
Yep, hang tight, Vivian. Go ahead,
Yep.
Harmony.
I was just wondering if the crew is able to accumulate gravel for road graveling this winter, where we're at with that, with our contract with the state.
Yeah, we have an agreement, and that we plow Main Street and Seldovia Street and Dock Street and trade for the state sanding our city roads. And of course, the state has, as Tyler has he maintains the proper amount of gravel in his stockpile for what he thinks they need to sand our streets. And we only use a small fraction for our little sander to sand the streets that Tyler can't get on with his truck. And so we're kind of fortunate enough in that we don't have to quite pay attention to that. One of the former parts of that agreement was that the city supplied a driver for the dump truck to haul the sand. And since the three of us did not have a CDL, we have not been able to drive the state's dump truck. We're working on that, but I kind of feel like it's kind of lopsided at this point now that Tyler not only drives the truck and hauls the sand and spreads the sand, and we get by with just doing the easy part of keeping Main Street clear. So I think we should feel quite fortunate that the state is able to handle that without any help from us at this point besides pushing the snow.
Okay, yeah, I think that I had some outdated information on how that contract worked. And then I was just wondering, who are you, the primary water plant? I don't know, employee?
At this point, I'm the primary water plant operator. Jonathan is still as a backup in case I leave town. And I've been intending on getting the new employees up there to start learning how to do the water checks, and we haven't done that yet. I'm pretty satisfied with doing the checks myself, but at this point, soon enough, we're going to have some folks up there learning how to check the water and be able to start and stop the plant and those kind of things. Backwashing takes a little practice, and monthly reports take some practice. And as time goes along, we'll be able to get everybody trained up and up to speed on that. But at this point, I'm doing the checks, and if there's an emergency, Jonathan comes in and helps.
Cool. So can I just get a clarification on the mud balls? Are you saying that's coming from the water source and it's clogging you guys, your filters?
No, the mud balls is just something that happens when filtrate flow, backwash flow levels are reduced and air scour times are reduced. And so it happens is since we have, we run a kind of a turbid surface water, it takes a lot of coagulant to keep it working properly. And when you have reduced flows, let's say unbalanced flows, like you're running multiple filters and yet your flow is not balanced, and so one filter is not really flowing very well and it has a buildup of coagulant in it, and then if you don't air scour it and backwash it aggressively enough, it'll build up in there. The coagulant will stick to the dirt, it won't be washed free, and it'll, the anthracite will make little balls. And they start out as little peas, and as time goes along, if you don't break them up, they'll end up the size of little whoppers. And we've had for the last year on an ongoing problem of these mud balls, and we're not in any extreme situation, but we have, there's these little pieces in there, and what they cause is fissures in the bed, and you'll have breakthrough sooner than you should if you did not have the mud balls. It's not like it's something that's, our plant's not broken. It's a deal. It's, we're trying to work them out, and we only backwash once a week, and so you don't get to work on it every day. You have to wait a week, break them up, and air scour. I've tripled the air scour time. And that seems to be really effective. And we've increased the flow rate through the filters by only using one filter, so you don't have low flow rates. It can be possible, helping for mud balls. It's just, I'm not an expert, I'm going by what we've learned from the other operators and the DEC fellows, and more aggressive, more often is better. And so that's what we're doing. And but, we still have some things to learn about how long is expected the lifespan of the filter media, how long it's supposed to last. I think it's in the book, but I haven't seen it yet. And it's one of those deals we're going to have to budget to replace the media at some point. I don't think it's a full replacement of the media. It might just be that we have to replace the anthracite, which is an 18-inch thick layer inside the filter. It'll have to be removed and renewed. But if we continue our aggressive program, we should be able to get the recommended life out of the media, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Anyone else? Okay, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Vivian.
Mr. Mayor. Yeah,
Yep,
thank
go-
you.
yep,
I'd
go
just
ahead.
like to thank Jordan for his, if you can hear me. Yeah.
Yep, you're good, Vivian.
I would
Go
just
ahead.
like Jordan for his, for a thorough report. Really appreciate it. And I also really appreciate his, in his goal summary of the teamwork. He feels that the teamwork that he's got of the two Johns and himself. I really like to hear that everybody's working well together and accomplishing the task, and he's heading it up very well. So I just want to compliment him for his report, and very pleased with it. I'd also like to encourage him, as others have, what he's already planning on doing, and that is having a maintenance report, especially on our larger pieces of equipment. That's something that would be good for the Public Works Department and for our accounting department and for the council. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. Any questions from the public? I do see one hand up there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Laurel Hiltz, if you can hear me okay.
Yep, go ahead, Laurel.
All right, great. Well, I just always appreciate when the brush is cleared, and it just makes a big difference for the roadways. And so I was just going to ask if it's not already on the list for clearing. I think the last time the alders along Shoreline Drive from Pete's Point to Joe Fleckenstein's place, I think the last time they were cleared was when Matt Gallion was with the city. So that's a number of years. But what we see quite a bit is that folks who are elderly tend to drive way into that corner coming up the hill because they're staying away from the branches. So if we could just include that on the list, that'd be really appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. And I don't see any other hands from the public.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
all right, thank you, Jordan. Appreciate your report this evening. That'll take us to item J5, City Clerk's report. This will be in your packet on page 32.
leave.
Yeah, so not really a report, but there is a memorandum. I don't normally give staff reports because I'm here regularly, but every now and then it's great to just be able to address the council about things that are happening in the clerk world, or things that maybe the council wants to consider. And this is a conversation that's been an ongoing conversation that's happened in the city office since even prior to our new administration, but just, how to have effective meetings. I know we switched to Mondays, we switched to 6 p.m. That seems to be helpful. But one thing that I've definitely learned or am learning is that the discussions really, it seems to be really valuable to be able to have time to hold open discussions that are outside of a regularly scheduled meeting. And I've heard from a few council members that maybe more shorter meetings might be more effective. And then also there's a consideration from the city manager of having just a long meeting once a month. But really it starts on page 32 of this memorandum. with a recommendation for the council to consider implementing a standing appointment for a committee of the whole or a city council work session prior to the regularly scheduled city council meetings. We have a really long list in-house of discussions that need to come up, like paid parking. Jack left docs on the list for tonight. Just, there are a lot of things that keep coming up over and over again. And, AMLIP, we're having that discussion before the 8th already as a work session. We're scheduling that in. And so it seems like it may be beneficial to just have that set as a time every council meeting. Prior to that council meeting from 4 to 5, we would have a work session. Or if that didn't work, then to perhaps even change the work set or the council meeting to start at 7 and have 6 to 7. So you have a dedicated hour where you can talk about whatever's on the agenda, whatever those long-standing topics are that need to be discussed. Or if there isn't anything, it's canceled. We don't have it. But I'll tell you now, there's a really long list. So it's just something for council to consider if there's a more effective way to be able to regularly have these discussions, so that we're not here, every Monday until 10 p.m. Or if you guys want to be here every Monday till 10 p.m. and just do it once a month, that's another option. I do have some notes in here on what a committee of the whole is, what a city council work session is, those differences, and then some of the benefits. And mainly really that's just, you're able to have that informal discussion with a set time. And then it makes it so that the regular council meetings can be more effective and shorter because those discussions have already taken place. So in your council meeting itself is just really action items, things that you've already really discussed for the most part, or regular housekeeping items. And it also, shortens staff time, and it just goes through those benefits there. But that's for council consideration. No action tonight, but if that's something that you guys did want to consider, potentially with time changes or whatever you guys thought was more effective, it could be an ordinance or a resolution or just something that we implemented in-house, but wanted council to have the opportunity just to consider if there was a way to more effectively have these discussions.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Any questions or comments for the city clerk? Go ahead, Bobby.
So, a couple things. Just my personal opinion, I'm not in favor of moving the council meetings from 6 to 7. And I am not in favor of just having it once a month, because I believe we have too much to do. But I'm very much in favor, and always have been, and in fact suggest them, that we have work sessions. And I think would be good to have one, like you said, before a council meeting. We're going to come to council meetings anyway, so we could just come a little early. What about like 4:30 to 5:30? Then you're not sitting here a whole hour before the council meeting. I don't know, that'd be my idea, but I'm all in favor of the work sessions, definitely. And even work sessions at different times when we need them. Because then maybe we could shorten some things that we discuss at a council meeting. So that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Anyone else?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Hold tight, Vivian.
Yep.
Jennifer, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to second Bobby with, I am not really in favor of a later council meeting, as I have little ones at home to need to go to bed. So 6 works for me to keep it there. I don't mind the earlier work sessions if they need to happen. I'd like to think that they wouldn't need to happen all the time, but I'm guessing I'm wrong. But yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Vivian, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with what Bobby and Jennifer both said. I would keep us at the 6 o'clock our city council meetings, but I think it's important that we have, when we've got big topics, there are going to be long conversations and then we can get public input. I think having work sessions or committee of the whole is a very good idea. So I'd like to see us implementing those so we don't have the extensive long council meetings, which you don't always do your best work in, and people, not everybody knows about them. So the more input we can get from the public, I'm into. So this is a conversation I'd be willing to have later on when we're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else from council? Yep, go ahead, John.
I'm not opposed to the 4 o'clock work sessions either. It works for me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just give my 2 cents. Yeah, I like the 6 o'clock start time for the council meetings. I mean, I wouldn't want to go any later than that for the start time. The new format seems to work well. If the council does decide to go to a committee of the whole or a work session prior to the meeting, I mean, 4:30 or 5 o'clock would seem adequate, based on I don't know if it'd be a standing time, every meeting. And then we just, if it's, I guess we'll have that further discussion if it's 4:34, 4:30, 5 o'clock, based on what we need. But it would seem like we might be able to get through some of the topics, speak a little more candid, and then kind of get thoughts and everything prepared for the council meeting and kind of work through things. So I'm definitely not opposed to that. Any other questions, comments for the clerk? Okay, anyone from the public that wishes to speak to the clerk or have a question?
Not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no hands. All right, that will conclude the administrative reports tonight. Thank you, everyone, for that. Let's get through item K1 here. We'll do a couple and then take a quick break and then come back and finish up. Item K1 is resolution 22-15, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, addressing the sewer utility system maintenance needs of the private properties located at Kenai Peninsula Borough, parcels 19209-313 and 19209-316. And we'll go ahead and have a presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this is on page 35 in your packet, and the resolution lines out the situation that the city was in when we received a request from a property owner on 397 Rocky Street, which happened to be Councilmember Swick before she was a council member. And it was regarding troubleshooting the sewer main. The property owner was having troubles assessing the issues with the sewer system at their house. And so ultimately, the city ended up having to jet the sewer main that helps service those properties. And in the process of trying to jet the sewer main, it was discovered that there was a manhole that was buried. And the thought was we needed to unbury it in order to assess the sewer troubles that the property owner was having. And so it took a lot more staff time, and it made it so that the city had to bring heavy equipment out to the site as well as use materials. And if you look on page 38 in your packet, it's the Kenai Peninsula Borough parcel viewer map of the two parcels. The blue diamond shape is 397 Rocky Street. The red dot you see there, that's the manhole that was buried that we had to uncover. And then you can see those blue dots there are the manholes that are exposed. And so in the future, what this resolution is establishing is, first, because the interim city manager directed public works staff to unbury the manhole in order to troubleshoot the property, that expense won't be borne by the homeowner because the issue ended up being a crushed sewer connection line. And the sewer connection lines are maintained by the property owners. But because the city had directed staff to uncover this manhole and use this manhole to access another part of the sewer main and jet it, the resolution says that that cost won't be put on the property owner. It also says, though, that in the future, only under the city manager's discretion will that manhole be uncovered, because as of now, public works staff maintain that it doesn't actually need to be uncovered. It can stay buried because especially when looking at a sewer main, when you're jetting a sewer main, you start from the bottom and work your way up. And there's a manhole right on Rocky Street that provided access to the sewer main in order to jet from that blue dot you see there on Rocky Street all the way up to Chrissy Avenue. And so there's the ability to still service the sewer main or maintain the sewer main that services that property. The reason why the manhole is covered, the property owner asserts that it's previous owners said that the city manager at the time allowed for it to be buried. Administration doesn't have any record of that agreement. And there's an email on page 37 in your packet, just from the homeowner, just saying that assuming there's no written agreement, it was probably a handshake deal. And so I didn't feel comfortable, because this will be a long-ranging issue for the city sewer utility system to make the determination that without council input. So this resolution will keep the manhole buried. And usually the city doesn't like to have access to critical infrastructure obstructed, but public works staff believe you can still service that property without that manhole, since there's many manholes within the vicinity. And also says that if there needs to be an uncovering of that manhole for any maintenance, future maintenance needs, that cost won't be borne by the property owner, but it's only under the city manager's discretion. And I believe those are the two main points that this resolution addresses, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. Before we get into the discussion, we probably need to talk a little bit. Jennifer, this is your first council meeting, and we'll get right into, since your property is the subject here. You probably have, since this also involves waiving some fees, you'll probably have a conflict, I would assume.
Yeah, so I would ask to be excused from the vote. Is that how we're going with that? Yes. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for me about what happened or what, yeah. Since it
Okay,
is
and I
my
think
property.
that's, given the subject nature of asking for fees to be waived, and then obviously this was prior to your time on council. Basically what the conflict of interest part of our code says that the presiding officer of the city council shall rule on request by a member of the city council to be excused from a vote on the basis of a substantial financial interest. So there's a couple $1,000s in fees here. So I think it would definitely be appropriate that based on your declaration, you're excused. And then when we get to the public portion of it, we can, if you don't mind, if you have anything additional to offer or questions, we can ask you at that point. So, okay, so with that, we will move forward then to council discussion. Any questions, comments from council for the city manager?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I guess my big question is, why is the manhole buried? Is it topography, or what is the rationale that it's buried? And how deep is it buried?
Through the mayor, council member Rojas, I don't know why it is buried. And I didn't ask for a depth, and perhaps someone else.
I can actually answer that, because I witnessed that, because I got involved a little bit on that and went over to take a peek myself when the guys were working over there. It's the way when that lot was filled, the hill, it's a super steep grade there, and it ended up creeping over the embankment there, right, and the manhole's back probably 5 to 6 feet into the hillside, and it's straight up. It's a pretty substantial amount of, it could be 8, 10, 12 feet of material on top of it, depending on how you cut that slope. So I think that's why they decided it definitely would not have made sense to leave that exposed without either putting a piece of half culvert or some timbers or some sheet pile or something in there, which would have made a rather large, quick, steep drop off over there, which probably from a liability standpoint doesn't make a lot of sense. So it would take a little bit of effort to make that a safe, very safe if it was left uncovered. So I think that's why they decided, given that there are additional manholes around there, that it could be covered, reestablish the slope on that hillside. And then if, there was just alder vegetation basically at that point, kind of holding it all together. So it's not like it was anything, into their lawn or anything like that. So, and it makes sense from what I'm hearing here that if it needs to be uncovered again for any reason, that it'd be the same thing. Bring a piece of equipment, uncover it, do your business, and then cover it back up and move on. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Historically, I was just trying to figure out, because I also went over there when it was being dug on. And so I just was wondering why it would have to be back buried and why it was buried in the beginning. But if we can access it from the other manholes and do the job, then it seems like it could be dealt with in the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Anyone else from council? Questions, comments? Okay, we'll go to the public. Anyone from the public wish to comment on resolution 22-15?
I'm not seeing any hands. Oh,
I guess I'll speak.
Yep. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I don't really know what that third manhole down Chrissy Avenue. Is there even a sewer line down that street? Anyway, now I forget what I was going to say. When we were going through this whole process, we pretty much had every handyman in town over there looking at this thing, and they all told us that we needed to get access to that manhole to figure out what was going on. And so that's why we proceeded with that. There may also be some other infrastructure issues down there. From what I heard when they got inside there, seemed like things might not be functioning properly. That might be something that needs to be addressed later. Yeah, I mean, I understand that it was our problem in the end, but we were told to get access to that, and it definitely needed to be filled back in. I did talk to Ginny about a month ago to ask her if she remembers how this happened. And she doesn't really recall because it was 20 some years ago. She did say something that she didn't think it sounded like something that her husband at the time would have done without requesting proper permission. She said it doesn't sound like something he would do just to cover it by himself. So I'm assuming there was whatever conversations that did go down for that, for them to think that they could cover it the way they did. So hopefully we don't ever have to get back to it for my personal reasons. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Anyone else from the public? Okay, we'll go ahead and bring that back to council for final action. And what are the wishes of the council this evening?
Mr. Mayor.
Vivian, did you hear Bobby was making a motion?
Yeah.
Did you have any more follow-up comments or questions?
No, I'm sorry. I didn't hear anything. It went dead.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep. So, yeah, you were.
Okay,
Go ahead.
make a motion to accept resolution 22-15.
Second.
I'll second that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Sweat to accept resolution 22-15, second by Nathan. All those in favor, Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
and Swick is excused from this vote. Peyton
Aye.
and Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 with one abstention. Item K2. Let's see here. This one. Okay, resolution 22-16, an emergency resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing $4,250 from the Jackaloff Bay Dock Float Work Capital Project account, Boat Harbor Special Revenue Fund. We'll go ahead and have staff present. This will be found on page 39 in your packet.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm gonna start this off with a video. So first I'm gonna share my screen here. So this is a video of Jackaloff Dock, the approach, and the harbor master provided this video to me, and I thought it would be, it looks like our internet is making it a little jostly, but it really looks like that in the video on my computer here. So there's that video, and then let me try and pull up one more really quick here. Let's see.
There it is.
Okay. And so again, just another video that the harbor master sent my way, just to show Jackaloff Dock. I'm assuming this was the winter, but we may have weather like this year round. And so what we're talking about through this emergency resolution is approved funding in order to get equipment to help us keep this dock in place when it's undergoing storms like that. Where my mouse is right here, there's a piling hoop that's missing. And we actually need 2 piling hoops in addition to other equipment. And let me just stop the screen share here and pull up the resolution. So we're asking for $4,250 from the Jackaloff Bay Dock Float Work Capital Project account, and that money is actually community assistance program funds that the council set aside at the beginning of the year. So the state gave us $75,000 in fiscal year 22. We're trying to get away from balancing our operating budget with the community assistance funds, because the state every year talks about how it's going to remove those funds or cancel revenue sharing or reduce the funds that it gives to cities. And instead, cities are encouraged to use that funding for capital projects. And so council, we're taking baby steps. We moved $10,000 from that amount into a capital project account for Jackaloff Dock. Council initially gave permission to spend up to $5,000 from that capital fund to have a marine survey done of Jackaloff Dock. Through a relationship I had with an engineer at HDR Inc., I was able to find another marine surveyor who we're going to hear from later today at Turn Again Marine, who conducted the survey for free or in kind to the city. And so we still have the full $10,000 amount of those capital funds available for work at Jackaloff Bay Dock. And so this is giving permission for a little under $4,500, and the invoice for the work is also attached to the resolution on page 41 and 42 in your packet. And then in addition, there's more pictures of Jackaloff Dock starting on page 43. If you'd like to see some more photos, and the city clerk provided me with those photos, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Rachel. And just to be clear, we've got, so this resolution here specifically talks about, just so we don't get in the weeds, specifically talks about these few items, the piling hoops, et cetera, for this emergency repair, these funds. It is not a discussion on the Jackaloff Bay dock maintenance needs overall, which will be coming up here in our very next action item. So we just want to keep the discussion germane to this subject. So we'll go ahead and open it up to council for comments or questions for the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. This is an issue we've been talking about for a while with the repair floating, the installing the piling hoops, et cetera. And I think it's something we need to move forward with. It's just a little Band-Aid for the big issue, which we'll deal with later, but I'm in favor of moving forward with this for safety reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. George?
Yeah, I would support this. Certainly, it's just kind of shocking that these things cost like $1,500 a piece. It seems like a lot of money for a small piece of metal, but yeah, I support this.
Almost like an airplane, huh?
Yeah, close. Airplane, you just
Boats
think-
and planes.
Just think outrageous and multiply by 10.
That's it. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yep, Bobby, go ahead.
As much as I don't like it, I'm in support of this ordinance also.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Anyone else? Okay, anyone from the public that wishes to comment on resolution 22-16 regarding the emergency funds for Jackaloff replacement for the piling hoops?
I'm not seeing any. Hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Situation here. The dock's still being actively used throughout the winter by water taxis and a number of private vessels. And this is obviously an immediate safety concern, especially given the nature of our time of year and the bigger storms that we're going to be experiencing here probably real soon. We've already had a couple. So in my opinion, yeah, the quicker we can get this in the works, the better and the safer that dock will be here going forward here in the next few months. So we'll go ahead and put it to council. What are your wishes tonight?
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
I move to accept resolution 2216.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept resolution 22-16 by Peyton, and we have a second by Sweat. All those in favor, Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy. Aye. Swick,
Aye.
Peyton,
Aye.
Nathan.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 6-0. All right, item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business. And let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break here. Get up, stretch your legs, glass of water, whatever you need. And then we'll come back and finish up our new business for the evening and finish with the city manager's report.
Hi, Jason. This is Heidi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I'm so glad you got my message and were able to join us. We're just on a short recess here. I think everybody should be back in the next, hopefully 3 to 5 minutes, and then we will start that discussion.
Excellent. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a lot of
Okay, if we're all ready, we'll call the meeting back to order and we'll continue on with item M1, new business discussion on Jackaloft dock maintenance needs. This will be found on page 43 of your regular packet, and we'll go ahead and let staff present.
Thank you, Mayor. So a few months ago, actually more than a few months ago, in December of 2020, I met with the council and we discussed the city of Soldovia taking steps to enter into a lease with the state of Alaska for the tidelands surrounding Jackaloft Dock. And part of securing the tidelands was needing to do an appraisal. So we had to secure an entry authorization in order to conduct that work. So the appraisal cost the city, I believe it was $13,000 to do. And then we also entered into an entry authorization. And so if you go to page 76 in your packet, you'll see correspondence between myself and the DNR specialist, because the city has been charged a little over $1,200 for that entry authorization, which was retroactively put into place, I believe, for either 2019 or the beginning of 2020. And so while we're not technically leasing the tidelands from the state yet, and we haven't entered into a lease, we're still accruing that fee in order to hold permission to access the tidelands, even though we've even completed the appraisal for the tidelands. So the city, I just wanted to make sure that council knew that we have the tidelands. We're not in a lease for them yet, but that was one of the steps that the city needed to take if it wanted to be able to charge fees for the use of Jackaloft Dock. When we spoke about Jackaloft Dock last a few months ago, council asked me to check in with the state of Alaska to see if the state would be interested in reassuming ownership of Jackaloff Dock. So if you go to page 46 in your packet, you'll see an email from Wolfgang Jung, who is the Central Region Director for DOT, in which he's saying that because of the state's funding cuts to their maintenance and operations, they are definitely not in the financial position to reassume ownership of Jackaloff Dock. So that was one of the things that council asked me to look into. So we have the answer there. And then also per the original agreement, which you can see starting on page 48 is a memo from the former city manager, Tim Dillon, with the transfer agreement and bill of sale starting on page 49. If the city wants to transfer ownership of the dock to somebody else, we first have to get permission from the state in order to do that transfer, but that's still an option on the table if the city wasn't interested in maintaining ownership of the dock. So putting those things aside, I'm very happy to share that Jason Davis, who's the president of Turnagain Marine, is available to answer questions, and I hope give not only an introduction of himself and his experience in Alaska, but also walk through a condition survey assessment that Turnagain Marine did for the city of Soldovia in kind to help give a baseline of information to help council move forward with the decisions that the city is going to need to make in terms of Jackaloff Dock. So the condition survey starts a little after page 55. So on page 55, you'll see an email exchange between Jason and I, where he's just saying that he's going to send a report that states things like the dock is nearing the end of its useful life. It's not cost-effective means to continue retrofitting it and trying to significantly extend its useful life. Ongoing maintenance to keep the dock safe and functional will increase in frequency and will only address localized failures, not the overall status of the dock. And then provide suggestions on replacement strategies. So Jason, if you're, oh, I see you there. Hi. If you're able to give an introduction as well as an overview of the condition survey that Turnagain Marine did, that would be most helpful.
Sure. So again, I'm Jason Davis. I'm the president of Turnagain Marine. We're a design, build, dock, and marine construction company. We do a lot of in-house design, and part of that would be condition assessments. We've mostly been working on larger municipal projects and private facilities like cruise ship docks and port facilities around Alaska. When Rachel started talking to us, she was looking for a condition assessment, and what we determined was that there's really two separate ways to do a condition and valuation assessment. One is to be extremely comprehensive and go through systematically, bent by bent, bolt by bolt, each member, and note the deficiencies. And that's useful when you have a piece of infrastructure that you may try and design a replacement for, or a retrofit or repair. Concrete structures, really expensive structures that you're going to try and extend the life of. What we elected to do here was more of an overview that looked at the composite condition. And we did that because the systems on the dock, the flotation, the structure, the piling, were able to be assessed somewhat in groups. And we go into a number of points in the report, but the basic conclusion is the Jackaloff Dock is within a couple of years of needing to be taken out of service. I think you're rapidly approaching a point where questions of liability and safety are going to become, issues that the city is going to need to decide if it's worth trying to keep it in service longer and have some potential risk, or if it would be appropriate to take it out of service a little bit earlier and reduce that risk. But, I think that it's very clear that structure is at the very end of its days. So rather than stopping there and just saying that there's 3 years or less that the structure should remain in service, we contacted a couple of local, or not really local, they're both based out of Puget Sound, but float manufacturers that would do some preliminary design without a charge that would demonstrate what a new replacement should look like for a municipal quality facility. And we provided that along with a cost estimate. I guess one thing I'd like to say is Turnigan's not really under the expectation that we will be involved in the replacement. We took on this role of trying to provide some information to the city and making some recommendations. But just to be clear, we're not expecting that we will be involved in or have the right to do any of this work ourselves. And most likely there's probably some other firms that could be more economical than us. Harris Sand and Gravel out of Valdez is pretty economical in that part of the world, and they're capable of doing this work. I think they did the last harbor work. With that, I guess I would say that we recommended, in order to keep costs at a minimum, that the city could directly purchase the floats and take care of having floats brought to Alaska. In doing that, you'd avoid an expensive design fee, and you avoid needing to bring an engineer on to do a pile design, because the float manufacturers will do that. And then for maximum affordability, if you can time the installation phase when there's contractors working in Homer, I think they have some scheduled projects in the next couple of years, you would reduce mobilization cost, and that would be the most economical way to get this done. So in looking at it that way, we provided an estimate that I think represents the kind of lowest possible cost, assuming that the city takes on the role of procuring floats themselves. I think if you go to a traditional method of hiring a designer and putting it out to bid to general contractors, I think you could see probably anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million additional cost. There's nothing wrong with that method. That's pretty typical for municipalities, but that's a big premium to pay. Rachel, is there anything else you'd like me to hit specifically? I don't want to just, I don't know how much detail people are looking for on the assessment side.
No, Jason, that was great. I would like to direct council to page 61 in your packet. That's a cost breakdown that Jason is referring to. So saying that this is the lowest, most reasonable pricing, we're looking at basically $1.5 million to replace Jackaloff Dock. Within that same cost estimate, you'll see a quote for demo and disposal of Jackaloff Dock totaling a little over $80,000 if the city wanted to take the initial step of removing Jackaloff Dock to reduce liability, as Jason mentioned. And then in terms of maintenance, as mentioned earlier in that email, basically trying to extend the life of Jackaloff Dock with the increasing maintenance needs of the dock. And maybe Jason could explain more why it would be not in the best interest of the city to continually maintain the dock.
Yeah, I'd be glad to touch on that. So the reason that we recommended not spending a lot more time on, or a lot more money on maintenance, is the flotation is failing, and the structure and frames are at the end of their life as well. But the styrofoam billets that provide the flotation are uncoated. They're just like the white styrofoam that you would see in like a disposable cooler. And so they're saturated, they're losing their buoyancy, and they're beginning to unravel. And while they can go years and years and years without degrading, once they start to degrade through marine life and water intrusion, the foam just begins to crumble, and you lose buoyancy so quickly that you're not going to have the freeboard to really be effective. You could come through with billets and stuff them underneath and start raising the dock. And that certainly would buy some serviceability. The perpendicular section, the approach that comes from the shore is already down almost to the water line. And so that's going to make it, in the wintertime, it's going to be icy, slippery. But some additional billets would help that. But then you get into the issue that the structure is rotting. And it's not rotting to the point that the primary members, the beams that hold the floats together, are necessarily going to break or fail. But the fasteners are pulling out because the steel around the area where the steel penetrates through the wood causes it to rot more quickly. And those joints begin to fall apart. And when they fall apart, it creates more slop in the joint. And because the joints are no longer tight, they begin to bang and they start loading in a more dynamic fashion than they do when they're tight and well functioning. So that beating and rot together starts to do an accelerated failure. And while you certainly can get some additional service life out of doing some spot repairs, because the systems are failing, across the entire float, when you fix the worst places on the float, it'll transfer that load into the next worst place, and then you can fix that, and then it'll just keep going and finding a new weak point. And we're certainly not saying that there's no benefit to doing any more maintenance, but you could get to where you were spending thousands of dollars and getting very minimal return.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Jason. Appreciate that brief overview and assessment. We'll go ahead and put it to council for any questions, comments. George, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Are there any parts in this thing that are usable in the city harbor? In other words, could we salvage this thing, put it on to disassemble it, truck it into Seldovia, and then maybe work on it a piece at a time to use as replacement parts for our harbor?
So
$1,500 hoops seem like they ought to be usable, and repairable over a period of time. We could get something out of it, but I don't see us putting any more money into that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I'm done. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was a delay there. Sorry about that. Yeah. I certainly think that there's some components that you could get value out of. The steel pile hoops that are on the transition piece are sound. They're highly corroded, but they're sound. They could be cleaned up and painted and used as a replacement in the harbor. The section of floats that run parallel to the shoreline, the actual moorage floats, are in better shape than the approach floats that run perpendicular to the shoreline. They could be incorporated into something in the harbor. The other option that we didn't really offer in our cost analysis is you could replace the approach floats coming out to the actual mooring floats, and then some years down the road you could replace the mooring floats. The reason that we didn't look at that is we thought that the mobilization cost to go into Jackaloff Bay 2 times would offset the benefit of trying to get that extra life out of those floats. But they could certainly be used in a piecemeal fashion, at least in the existing harbor.
Thank you.
But I would
Mr.
say that
Mayor, if I may?
I would say even with that, they're going to have a pretty limited lifetime, but they would have some value that way.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, Jason, thank you so much for your report and all the work you did. That was exactly what came to my mind about the approach floats versus the moorage floats. Is it a possibility, if we go in this direction at all, to take the moorage floats and get rid of the approach float because they're trash, take the moorage floats and move it into the approach floats, and we just have an approach float to deal with what we're trying to deal with, which is possibly maintaining transportation in and out of Jackaloff. Is that a possibility to do something like that?
That would be a possibility. The issue that you would run there, and I'm not trying to be negative by pointing out all the reasons these things won't work well, but you could get some service life out of the floats. In order to make that a good investment, I think it would be important to contact a contractor like Harris Sand and Gravel. And if they could do the work while they were in the Homer area and you didn't have to pay a mobilization, they could do that. The piling that are holding the approach float in place are in fairly poor shape. They're just shallow. They're not in terrible shape. So I think where the value would come is if Harris or somebody could do that without a big expense. If you ended up bringing them in and paying a full mobilization, you would pause, and it's something that we could look at to give you a better answer, but I'm afraid that you would have more cost than you would receive value. That would, however, even if it wasn't the best value, that would be a lower cost solution that would buy you some time.
Okay, and then on top of that, Jason, if I took that number that you presented to us, and if we did just the approach float, could we just split that number in half?
Yes, you could. You could. I'm trying to see. So we actually broke them out separately. We got two separate quotes. So the onshore and offshore float were broken out separately. They were both, I guess, the same price in this case. So $180 a square foot was the price either way.
Gotcha.
The other thing that could be discussed,
yes, but continue.
The other thing that could be discussed is we didn't really instruct the float suppliers to provide an unreasonably high-end float, but we did try to specify what you would see in a typical municipal situation with higher freeboard for a little bit bigger vessels. If you were willing to go with something a little bit lighter and a little bit lower, there might be some savings. But again, we kind of just used judgment on the market and felt that we had a good balance between long-term value and affordability.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Bobby.
thank you. Thank you for that report, for that lovely report. I don't think anybody here has had their head in the sand about that dock. I certainly, myself do not know anything about docks. I'm just have learned a little bit over the years. But I guess my comment would be we have a huge discussion ahead of us about what we're going to do, because I'm also concerned about the liability. And is an insurance company still insuring us? No? Oh, that's lovely too. All right. Did I miss that somewhere?
Well, that's a whole nother piece here.
Okay, well, I won't get into that can of worms then. Anyway, thank you, Jason, for all that information.
Thank you.
George.
We have two water taxis, primarily just one water taxi that does most of the business here. We seem to be looking for a great big battle and a lot of expense to support one opportunity to ever make any revenue. It just, to me, just doesn't make any sense to try to fend off the inevitable here. If we cut the storage thing in half and use it for the approach part of it, then we end up with a smaller rat's nest. I just don't see us coming out of this anyway shiny at all.
Okay, thank you, George.
Rachel,
Jason,
did you want to?
yes, Mayor, thank you. Jason, I have one quick question for you. So in terms of quality of dock, I've heard you say like standard for municipal, like a dock that's municipal quality. Can you explain municipal docks versus regular docks, I guess, or private docks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the dock, especially the approach sections that are out there, are built similar to how a homeowner would typically build a dock. The hardware that was used, the foam billets that are uncoated, the timber that was there looks like it was commercially available timber, like from a Spinard Builders or some sort of lumber company. When you build a municipal dock, they have special marine grade timber that's designed to be treated and submerged in salt water. The billets, the flotation devices would be higher quality, heavier tubs to get longer life. If they did styrofoam, they would be coated with polyurea coating, like similar to a vehicle bed liner coating. They would also be higher out of the water for the most part. I don't know exactly what these floats were when they were new, but normally, you would expect a float like this to be 18 inches to 2 feet out of the water. It just makes them a little bit safer. That takes more flotation, which takes more, cost and expense to build, but it reduces liability by keeping them out of the spray zone, keeping them drier. They're typically wider and heavier. I shouldn't say necessarily just wider. The dimensions of your dock were relatively narrow, but the heavier with higher flotation, they're more stable so that you're less likely to have slips, trips, falls. And then the rest of the difference would just be in longevity. A high quality municipal dock should be able to last from between 35 and 50 years, depending on the maintenance and the conditions that it's moored in. And obviously that presents a cost up front, but the last thing you want to do is be having this conversation again in 15 years.
Got it. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, any additional council questions, or comments before we go to the public?
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask?
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I guess I would ask for clarification of what we're trying to do with this discussion. Refresh my memory. Off on Friday, are we having a discussion over this, what we're going to do about the jackaloff, or am I off on that?
Go ahead, Rachel.
Through the mayor, council member Rojas. So this is follow-up from questions that council had a few months ago regarding next steps for Jackaloff Dock. And so Jason, if the council is finished with discussion, I'd like to thank you so much for your time. And I know we're going to have a question from the public, but you don't have to stay for the next part of the conversation, which is what does the council wish to see in order to help move this project forward, given the length of time we're looking at for how to work on Jackaloff Dock? Does that answer your question, Councilmember Rojas?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Jason, if you could stick tight though, just in case we have any questions from the public for you for just another minute or two, that'd be fantastic.
Very good. I can do that.
All right, thank you. Yep, let's go ahead and go to public here, and I see we do have a hand here.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a Miss Carrie Hendrick.
Okay, Carrie, if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay, I'm just curious. So he said that the dock initially, as it's built now, was built more in a a homeowner style, and I get that. But does anybody know how long that float has lasted as it's been built at this point? He was saying that missile dock, they're looking at 35 to 50 years, but I'm curious to know how long it's been, how long it's lasted in its current construction.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel, if you have some information.
Yes, through the mayor, to answer that question, the city assumed ownership of the dock in 2008. And before that, it was owned and maintained by the state of Alaska. And I don't have a year that the dock was constructed by the state in the packet, but I want to say that dock is at least 30 years old, if I were to make an administrative assumption there.
Yeah,
Right.
we would probably need some anecdotal testimony from some people that have lived here for a long time, and how far back they can remember seeing that dock in place.
Been there ever since I've been here, 31 years.
30 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say 30 plus years.
So it's just curious to know, in the, he was saying a municipal dock would last the 35 to 50, and in its current construction, this last 30, and it was probably substantially cheaper to build it, in a similar style of the way it's built now. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think the point would be that, yeah, if you had to call, our dock probably would have been at the end of its service life many years ago versus where's that a new dock like the one that they're proposing with the municipal dock. I mean, you might get 70 years out of it, based on how
Right.
we're limping our dock along now. So it's hard to say, but yeah, no, good point, Jeff. I think that's you there. So I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments from the public?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Miss Jenny. And Mr. Mayor, if we could have the public state their names for the record, that would be extremely helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Jenny Chissis. And I just wanted to, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, got you loud and clear, Jenny.
Awesome. When George was mentioning that, we have only one water taxi service or something that's coming to the dock, I guess I would really say that there are many, many people that use that dock facility, private and business, multiple different uses, and it's a very important gateway for folks when the weather's bad to come into Jackaloff, et cetera. And I think that, I hope that the city's not looking at abandoning it or leaving it out of the picture. I think there's just, I don't know what the solution is, but I think that there's many people in the community that use it quite a lot. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. Any additional questions or comments from the public?
I'm not seeing any more hands.
Okay, if there's no follow-up questions for Jason, we want to thank you for your time this evening. Appreciate the report. That was a excellent piece of work and definitely a public service. And the city of Soldovia definitely appreciates your work and effort in preparing and submitting that report, and it's much appreciated.
Well, thank you guys. If there's anything else we can do as a follow-up, we're glad to do that. And then very quickly, if I could, I don't remember Carrie's last name, but to his question about the service life, they were exactly correct. When I said 35 to 50 years of service life, that would be for something that you would see that would still be in a municipal serviceable condition. And, I think that he was exactly right in saying that the Jackaloff dock would have been considered beyond its life quite some time ago. And if you were willing to let it go that far, the 35 to 50 would be significantly more.
Yeah, appreciate you clarifying that.
Very good. Well, you guys have a nice evening. If we can do anything, just let us know.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Appreciate it, and
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
You too.
All right, so that brings us back to the council for any action. I don't anticipate any action at this meeting, but I do anticipate maybe a little additional discussion on where you guys see this heading. So now just so I can chime in here too, the insurance piece is in your report, right? I can't remember where I read that.
I initially thought that was going to come before the council tonight through a resolution, but it's an ordinance because it's a code change. So you're going to hear about the insurance piece to Jackaloff Dock at the next meeting, but to just keep it short, our insurance company doesn't offer coverage for any watercraft over 27 feet that use Jackaloff Dock. And so that's why there's a code change proposed to limit watercrafts using the dock from 35 feet to 27 feet. So that if someone got hurt or used the dock that had a boat that was over 27 feet, the city would have no coverage for that.
Yeah, we might as well jump into it because that in itself is going to raise a ton of questions on how, and that we may even need to talk to our attorney on that one, how that works in the insurance world in terms of where the liability starts from the time a person steps foot on that dock coming off of either a private boat or a water taxi. So I'm just, I'll throw that out there, but let's go ahead and start the discussion. John, go ahead.
New in the game, I guess I understood what I read was that they weren't going to cover us at all. And that's not the case. You're saying that they would cover us for vessels under 27 feet.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. But at the same time, a lot of the vessels that all of the Mako vessels are all longer than that for the most part.
Yeah, I think the shortest ones are probably right at 27, 28 feet, somewhere
they're
right. The
on
Blue
the
2 is
line.
probably 28
Right.
feet, 26 or 28, I would
And
think.
Just another little, I mean, I rely on that dock extensively in the winter time for products to Seldovia. But I've also fallen many times on that dock in the last 2 years. I've been down there when that dock is 6 inches under the water and there's 10 inches of ice on it. And it's a pretty scary situation. So I don't know. We've got our work ahead of us.
Yep. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep. Go ahead, Vivian. I'll get back to you.
Yeah, this is going to be quite a long discussion and a work session that I think that we need to open up to the public. This has got emotional attachments to people. It also is transportation issues out of Jackaloff. So this is a big issue, much bigger than what we can take care of in a short order of time. So to me, this looks like we need to open up to the public and hear from the public, and then the public needs to hear about prices and what we're looking at, and if it's even feasible for us to continue on with Jackaloff, and then also bringing in those people who use it and see what they're willing to pay to use it. So it's a big issue, and we got, as John just said, it's a tremendous issue that we all need to look at, and the public needs to be involved with it, and those are users of the dock need to be part of the discussion and solution. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. And I just want to chime in real quick too before. So when we have that meeting and we start getting, the public involved and we start talking about, personal feelings and sentiment and, stuff like that and emotional attachment to the dock, the driver for this discussion, bar none, and there's not even a question about it, is going to be insurance and liability. That's going to drive the entire discussion. It is what it is. I'm not saying AMLGIA is our only option for insurance. We probably need to call around and just to do a little bit more work to see what other, options we have. But I do agree they're probably going to be extremely limited. But the bottom line is that is going to be, I don't think any of us want to just go out there and tear that dock out. I mean, it serves a meaningful purpose to our community and access to our community. So, but we're in a tough situation. We don't have $1.5 million sitting in a bank account that we can just go and write a check and have a brand new dock show up. So, that's going to be a very, very robust discussion, but knowing full well, if we can't insure anything over that, and then even if we can insure them under it, I agree exactly with what John said. I mean, it's horrific in the wintertime out there when the storm surge starts and that dock's, partially submerged when people are getting dropped. I mean, it's a scary deal. So it only takes one person, right, to have a $3, $4, $5 million insurance claim and it's over at that point. So that's how that discussion is going to go. That's as simple as that. Go ahead, Bobby.
Well, I'm going to reserve everything for later, but is that on the 29th? Is that the discussion about Jackaloff?
Through the mayor, no. For this Friday, we're going to be talking about the road grader
Oh,
and the community block development grant.
okay. So when is this discussion going to?
Well, that's why, so tonight, staff have presented council with this initial information as follow-up to previous discussions. And so I'm waiting direction from the council on what you would like to see next. And so a possible solution could be directing staff to work on educational materials, similar to what we saw with the ballot proposition with the road grader. That could then be mailed out to residents. And then also setting a date for a community conversation meeting to talk about Jackaloff Dock, because if somehow the city were to secure the capital funds in order to replace the dock, just throwing that out there, then what is the city doing to ensure operational maintenance needs and having a steady and secure revenue stream coming into the city? And how would that be enforceable? And is that something the city would like to see of directing resources on a regular basis outside of city limits in order to provide the service? So more significant conversations. So that's just a suggestion that I have for the council, if you would like, for staff to work on an educational briefing to the community, and then a date that we'll set with the council where the public's invited to offer comments on Jackaloff Dock. So that's one route you could take. You could refrain from pushing out more information to the public at this time and have another separate meeting. I'm just awaiting your direction.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
So I feel like this discussion is mostly emotional for a lot of people because that dock has been there for so long. It's such a convenience, all the things that have already been said. But if we can't have it insured based off of its current state, and the current life expectancy of this dock is less than 5 years, and we know that we have a price tag of over $1 million on this, what is the revenue source? You just said, what are we going to do to raise monies for that dock? Are we going to implement a new tax? Are we going to make it a service area? Can we do a service area and some sort of dock like landing fee, like a monthly fee based off what we think people are bringing to the dock? We're talking about the water taxis. And I mean, everybody sitting in this room knows that that's the conversation, knows that's the reality, but the public needs to see those numbers, needs to see the realities of what maintaining that dock entails. You don't get to have that dock for free, which we've essentially had for so long. It's basically been just piecemealed together by volunteerism and emergency management and just hopes and dreams, and that doesn't work anymore. So this is a really big discussion, but I feel like in putting this information forward, those are the things that the general public needs to take into consideration. The city cannot maintain the dock with its current budget, which means the dock needs its own form of revenue, which is gonna be, to some extent, a tax. And we already know how people feel about taxes. And that needs to be included in the discussion. Like we've had the insurance put out there. We've talked about how much the pieces cost. We've now had it surveyed. Now we need to talk about those big questions. I mean, I'm sorry to say all this, it's so redundant, but I feel like we need to talk about it. Anyways.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I would suggest that we plan to have a work session and the staff brings forward the insurance question that we had and any information that the city managers received tonight. Bring it forward one more time. We have a work session. And after that work session, then we design or come up with submitting out to the public a date and time that we're going to have a discussion. And Harmony's correct. And everybody else on the council I know is thinking the same thing. How is this thing going to pay for itself? And how do we go about it? And is it vital to the community? All those big questions need to be discussed and answered. And it's going to be a process, that's for sure, a process of a process. But I would say that we schedule, if we have time, and I know we have 2 hours booked for Friday, that we schedule another work session and set aside just for this topic and see where we're at that time to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. I think from what I'm hearing here, George, I'll get to you in just a second, but yeah, just to make it clear and concise, I think there's at least three things that I see in terms of education for the public that needs to be out there. We have an immediate need, which is both safety and insurance liability, right? Those are immediate things that maintain status quo. That's just simply status quo to keep the dock in service. The second thing is the capital need, right? We have the replacement cost, that piece, we just got a pretty good piece of information. So we've got an idea. And then going back to what Harmony said about the operational and what the city manager said, we've got an operational need as well. What's it going to take? What do we envision the needs of operating and maintaining a brand new dock out there? And what is it going to take to pay for itself to support those costs? So I think, yeah, we need some very, very distinct amounts of information on those bullets so that the public understands what we're up against. And then that would drive the remainder of the conversation. So George, I interrupted you. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's all right. The very first time I participated in a discussion about this thing, I suggested that we get over the water taxis and see just what they were willing to do to help us down this road. And I would bring that up again, as well as having the numbers that it's going to cost to replace a thing for education to the public. I believe we should also have some idea of whether or not the water taxis are really interested in helping us out. This is a luxury that we cannot afford as far as just being a nicety for sport purposes. Yes, it's a next to essential gateway to the city. John uses it professionally, but the main use of the thing is 1 or 2 water taxis, and they're going to have to step up if we're going to have any chance at all of making this work. It's going to have to be a user fee situation, and I think that's fair, but it's also essential. I think we need some kind of commitment from the major users of this thing as to what they would be willing to do to help us pay for this.
Kind of just to dovetail on what you on what Harmony mentioned too, that I was thinking about, and what you're saying is, I don't know, and thinking outside the box of something like a recreational service area, to where somehow it's just no different than the sales tax that we just passed, right? You can't look to 1 or 2 or a few people to pay for massive infrastructure. It will not work. It's not going to happen. It has to be lots of little dollars from a lot of different users and a lot of people. It's the only way. It's the only thing that makes sense. So, John, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually have a little input on that. The Mako organization, the Harbor in Homer, began charging them to be able to use the barge ramp. Are you guys familiar with that situation? And they were assessed a fee to be able to use that barge ramp. And it's been my experience, what they did is rather than paying the fee, they quit using it. So, and if you just do the round numbers, $1.5 million divided by 50 years is 30 grand a year. So to maintain that dock and keep it out there, we're going to have 50 grand a year to maintain it and be able to replace it down the road 50 years from now. So, and I don't know what the answer is. Do we have any kind of stats as to how many people use that dock a year? Probably not. I mean, it's a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's what we're lacking on is good, clear. So homework, making a bunch of
Right.
phone calls and,
So-
and asking folks for those numbers.
I'd like to see us be pretty well prepared before we go to the public, because it's going to be emotional.
Yep. Jennifer?
Yeah. A big battle if you pick on the water taxis, because there's a lot of private use that nobody even knows about because they come into Jackalope and then they go to Red Mountain or they hang out the road. There's a lot of port fee nightmare all over again. And they probably won't stop using it. They're just going to tag it on to your bill when you go with them. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge discussion that we're not going to solve tonight. We need to figure that out. But in the meantime, we also need to find out what happens now. Right? We're not, before we make any decisions, what happens if someone falls tomorrow? We need to figure that out in the meantime and know how that is going to affect the city. That's something that needs to be figured out sooner rather than later, because obviously this whole replacement, whatever, is not going to happen anytime soon.
Yep, agreed. And that goes back to our immediate needs. I think the safety and the liability are the two top things. Harmony?
Yeah, so I agree with that. I didn't really touch on it because I feel like it's been pretty well said, but is it in the cities? I mean, I'm still in my 20s, but I mean, last year we landed on the beach instead of landing on that dock. And it was just so icy, and I have small children and I had things that I need to unload, that it was safer on a flat day to land on the beach than it was on that dock. And if this is a year forward, so, I mean, should we consider putting up signs stating that we don't want people using it until we've mitigated raising it, or decided that we're gonna do that or not gonna do that? I mean,
Well, and that's part of the questions. I don't think I want to make that decision right now, but I do want to know we're insured for sure if something happens. So
well, should we make that a discussion before, it's like January? Like, now they're coming into the freezing rain and snow and.
Mayor, may I?
Yep, go ahead.
So through the mayor, Councilmember Peyton, when I came to the city, I was assuming that the city did have additional insurance called marine liability or marina liability insurance. We have that at our harbor because our AML-JIA general liability insurance only offers a base amount of insurance. And so you want additional because there's a lot of risk that happens at a harbor or dock. So when I came to the city of Soldovia, I found out that, in fact, we had not secured marine liability insurance for Jackalope. So I spent a lot of time with staff compiling all of this information that was requested by marine liability insurers to figure out, are they willing to take the chance on Jackalope dock? The fact that the city doesn't charge fees is a huge red flag to a lot of people. Operator Cameron helped me come up with a bunch of information to answer their questions. That wasn't enough. They wanted a condition assessment. And so this was actually months ago that I had been working on this, and only until Turnagain Marine completed that condition assessment was I able to receive the response that, at least from Navigators, which is the same insurer for our harbor, denied the city of Soldovia because the assessment says end of useful life. And so they don't want to take the risk because there's risk, high level of risk already implied within Jackalope dock. So that's just background information. My concern with saying don't use it is, how do you enforce that? Are we going to have our chief of police out at Jackalope dock monitoring people using that? It's an inherent liability I actually looked into to help the city with information. I had asked while he was still with the city operator Kennedy
to help me look at getting a camera out there where we could do daily counts, but there isn't enough connectivity. Plus vandalism was a concern if people found out there was a camera out there. So I tried at least to get that initial information for the city, but I think you're going to have issues with enforceability. People using it regardless, even if you say it's not allowed. So I don't think unless the city were to do something severe, saying that you can't use it will offer any protection because someone can still use it. We've been seeing the same type of behavior at the city office. We've put caution tape in front of our entranceway because the awning could potentially fall on somebody and people just rip the caution tape or move the cones out of the way. So it's a very serious issue. And I don't think the city can mitigate that other than just figuring out a way to completely block off someone's ability to use that dock in the meantime.
Ultimately, you just have to remove it because people are still going to even tie up to it. And that doesn't relieve your liability. Someone ties up to it in the middle of the night, comes out, slips, falls, busts their neck. We're still on the hook. So, yep, go ahead.
I have a question. So I guess I'm just curious. Obviously, we're stepping into a huge can of worms. I think we need to have a work session sooner than later so we can come up with a plan of what we're going to do, whatever that is. The other question I have is, so if we don't allow boats over, what was it, 27 feet?
Mhm.
Will they insure us out there? Or they're not going to insure us at all?
No, they wouldn't.
So,
Through the mayor. No, because the condition of the dock, we can't get additional coverage, at least through Navigators, which is the company that AMLJA works with. We do have coverage out there through AMLJA for anyone on a watercraft 27 feet or under.
oh, we do have that
We
coverage.
do have that. But
Okay.
anything more significant, like even commercial fishing vessels that tie up there, we don't have coverage.
Yeah,
for
well,
that.
I mean, obviously, we have a lot to discuss on that, subject. I mean, and I don't think it's going to be solved in an hour or two either. But I'd say, we need to have a work session as soon as possible so we can figure a few things out.
Didn't the state give us a big chunk of money along with that dock when we took it over? Is there
Yes.
any of that left?
No,
Where to go? Away.
I don't know
Okay.
where it went. We don't have any of it.
So Mayor, if I may, just so that because I'm hearing from the council, you would like a work session before taking it and getting more public input. You want an additional work session. And so what specific information do you want? You want me to look at other marine liability insurers to see if they would be willing to insure the dock, but what else would you like at that work session to help you?
So,
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
so I think that, I mean, I've only been on council for a year, but we've been talking about this since I've been here, and it's been all the same things. I brought up the same thing Jen said multiple times. We know that we can't, we're gonna have a hard time enforcing any type of fee system. It's gonna be a battle, whether we enforce a fee system, whether we implement one, whether we pursue a tax. We do both, all those things. But I do think that those hard, ugly truths need to be put on the agenda so that the community starts thinking about it in a realistic way. What does keeping this dock entail financially for the people who use it? And we'd like to talk about those taxis, but they must be like maybe a third of who uses that dock. I mean, there's a lot of components, but the financial burden needs to be considered for public discussion. The public needs to see that.
So we can sum this up in 2 words or 1 word. It's called risk.
Yeah,
2 words, risk assessment.
yeah.
How much risk are we willing to take? If our risk is mitigated from vessels and passengers 27 feet and under, and we have 0 coverage from vessels 27 feet and over, And we have no control over who shows up on that dock any given day or night. How much risk are we as the city, we as the community residents willing to accept? It's simple. That's the day and age we live in. And if we don't think, if we're going to roll the dice and continue to play Russian roulette, then status quo, it is what it is. If we get a $5 million claim, I mean, you can't die and not sue somebody for less than a couple $1 million. I mean, that's just, if there's any kind of fault there. I mean, that's a given in the day and age we live in, right? So George, go ahead.
Many times when I was working in their taxi business, would have an operator like out at Windy Bay, logger, say, okay, we need to be named insured on your policy. Didn't cost me anything, but they became named insured because I was primarily going to that airstrip. I think we could ask the water taxis to name us as insured on their policies. That would help this some, at least for the boats that are over 37 feet.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's a small piece of it for sure on operators that we know of. But in order for us to control it against, any other larger operators, we're just not, we're still open. I mean, we're open to liability and we're open to added risks.
We
So,
can't continue to be open to liability.
right,
That's,
right. I mean, that's
very good.
yep. So, all right. Well,
Mr.
we
Mayor, if I
are,
may.
yep, go ahead.
Yep. Well, just one more thing. I'm not sure if Rachel got her answer or not, but I think most of the council is concerned about what you can find out about risk management and what we can do about it. And posting a sign out there, if we really are looking at vessels over 28 feet, if that's not possible, then we need to at least put up signs saying that vessels 28 feet and more, or whatever the number is, are not allowed to pull in there. But I also think that it'll be a brainstorming session, because we have so much going around the table right now that we need to brainstorm and write it down and see where we're at. And as far as somebody asked about where the $380,000 went that the city got with the jackaloff, I believe we brought that up a few times at city council meetings, and that money got re-put. I think it never was separately accounted for jackaloff, and correct me if I'm wrong. And it was put into the harbor funds. And I don't think it has been able to be accounted for exactly where it went, but it's gone as far as we know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rachel, I think you brought that up before. But again, when we meet, it's going to be a brainstorming issue, and maybe we can address more what we need from the city. But I agree with Bobby, it needs to happen sooner than later. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vivian. Yeah, so we're approaching 3 hours here. Have we, did we go to I lost my train of thought here. Have we gone to the public yet on this? We did?
We have,
And we're
Mr.
back.
Mayor.
Okay.
Oh, but I see 2 hands raised again.
I don't think we did go to the public on this.
we did.
We
We
did.
did?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, let's go ahead and we'll, let's let these last 2 and then we're going to wrap this section up. Go ahead, Crystal, let's go ahead and have Crystal and then we'll go back to.
And if you guys in the public could please state your name for the record, that would be extremely helpful.
Crystal Collier, thank you so much. I didn't realize that you had already taken public comment, but I'll keep it short. I see that I think a big consideration should be at your meeting is if the city of Seldovia needs to have an investment 10 miles from the city of Seldovia that is hard to manage and maintain and obviously not cost effective. I think the second one would be the revenue that you have already received for that float in the tune of, it was under 400,000, but whatever it was, 375. That money being misspent, I think is a great concern, and it would be for the general public if you wanted to tax. Service area, I don't think you could tax a service area for a harbor. I don't believe you'd get community support for that, and I'm not even sure that would be the correct application for a service area. And the other question is, definitely the liability for such a dock at this time with the current situation. I agree with whoever said to put up the signs and say you're limiting the size of the vessels. Of course, somebody larger can pull in, but if somehow you can write that it's more at their own risk than it would be the cities. Obviously, that's only as good as the paper is written on, but there might be some reduction of liability if somebody came in oversized and ended up taking out the dock or sinking in the harbor. Obviously, there's been a lot of sinkings out there that haven't even been brought up. So there's a lot of risk that the city has assumed. And I'm shocked to hear that you don't have liability insurance on anything over 27 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And looks like we have one more.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you loud and clear. Who's this?
This is Carrie Hendrick. That was Jeff Snedgen who spoke earlier in the same email. So I just wanted to support too, if you were able to regulate whatever the insurance cap is on the length of boat, especially the footage that you showed, the video footage that Layla shared. That's what Jackalope looks like in a really strong mostly southeast wind. And when you do have a larger boat tied to Jackalope, especially on the outside in that condition, it yards on the dock pretty hard. So I think that when the stayed on the dock, I believe they had was it 28 feet or under 30, and George enforced that pretty hard, I think. And probably especially the fact that that dock is getting towards the end of its lifespan, I think it's a good call on all fronts. And side note, the Bluetooth is 26. And we often go to the beach, even when we come into Jackalope. I mean, I don't really actually have a line on the dock. A lot of times when I come into the beach, I come in as close as I can and offload right at the dock, which makes it easier for people, especially with a lot of freight or older folks, to get on and off. And the water taxis could function just going to the beach if they needed to. But really, as much as the water taxis in a business are also very much into service to the community. And as you all know, in the winter, there's many days where you're not flying, and sometimes it's a medevac situation. So I think that would be a piece to also be part of this discussion is the safety for the community, and Jackalope does play a role in that. And thank you all for your time, and Jason Davis again for putting all that effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate those comments. Okay, that should wrap it up for public comment. Okay, so we've had pretty robust discussion on this tonight. Looks like we want a work session in the near future. And then we have obviously some immediate needs that we need to address and get figured out.
Roger that.
Are you good with that?
I'll do my best.
Okay. All right. Let's see here. We're just at 3 hours here. So let's try to get wrapped up here through these next couple items here. Item M2, discussion on appointing 2 council members to work with staff on the land use management plan, otherwise known as LUMP. Go ahead and we'll have presentation by staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, it's an unfortunate acronym, but I think we're stuck with it now. Just to keep it short and quick, we've discussed before with an initial draft of the land use management plan. Obviously, there's still a lot more work to be done on it. It's a huge plan. And we would like to see, a proposal page for the council with all the properties listed out in their consideration categories, as well as a page that talks more about Philadelphia Municipal Code and what the options are if the council decides to dispose of a property or lease a property, what the various options for those what the various process would be for different processes for those properties. So with that in mind, it would be really helpful just if 2 council members wanted to kind of help with the project as we go along and have regular discussions with me or other staff as we work on it, in order to make sure that we're carrying on the council's vision. And because it is an extreme heavy workload, just having that support to make sure, we're following everybody's wishes would be extremely helpful.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. We'll open it up to council. Any takers?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead,
Mr. Mayor.
Vivian. We'll just cut right to it. Go ahead.
We're cut right to it, right? Yeah, I would be interested in, if somebody else wants to do it also, I'd be willing to share that, or with anybody else if somebody else wants to do it. But I'd be willing, I think it's a very important issue that we need to move forward with. So I could put my name in the hat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Any other discussion, Bobby?
Yeah, I would like to put my hat in to be on the lump committee also.
It would not be a committee because we would have to have it be formalized. We'd be working informally through the
Oh, it'd be,
process.
okay.
But yeah.
Okay.
Basically doing a whole lot of legwork prior to information coming to council. So any other discussion, comments, volunteers? Don't be so shy over there, new folks. Okay, looks like we do have a couple people that are Vivian and Bobby. They're both interested. We can go ahead and jump to public. Anyone from the public have any comments or questions on the discussion for appointing 2 council members to work with the city on the land use management plan?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I think it is this one within my prerogative to just go ahead and appoint? Or, yeah, okay.
Yes, please do, Mr. Mayor.
All right, I will appoint council members Sweat and Rojas to work with the city on the development of the land use management plan. And I appreciate both of you and your willingness to give up additional time to help with this project. And it is a project. You're so welcome. Okay, thank you. All right, item M3, action memorandum 22-01, appointing a council member to represent the city on the Soldovia oil spill, otherwise known as SOS Response Team Board, and we'll have presentation by staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sorry that this wasn't routed to you and the city manager prior. So it's on page 89. You won't see your signatures there, but hopefully everything still stands correct. That let me just turn to that real quick so I know what I'm saying here. Sorry. In the past, the city, through a resolution 2106, decided to sponsor the Soldovia oil spill team through a annual allocation of funds. And then a part of that is also having a member of the city council on the SOS board of directors, because those allocation of funds are for the city being a member of SOS. And part of that is being able to have a member of the council on the board of directors. Previously, council member Kohlberg was that member and was appointed through action memorandum 2101. But since he is no longer with us on the council, we need a new member to be appointed, nominated, or volunteer to be a member of SOS for the council and attend meetings and represent the city.
Sounds like whoever took John's seat gets to. All right, we'll bring it to council for discussion. As you well know exactly what Heidi said, we do need to fill this seat if possible, to have some input from the council at the SOS board meetings. Yep, John, go ahead.
I have a question, how often do they meet, and does anybody know, is it monthly or semi-annually, or? Sorry.
I know that's a great question. We discussed it last time and I can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it's usually monthly. It's been kind of hit miss lately with everything with COVID not having
I think it was planned
many
monthly,
trains.
but they're like everything else. It's probably been slipping.
Yeah, because they just
Well,
haven't had as many
That's my reluctance to volunteering, is my current schedule and the training and just trying to get up to speed, you know. That's my reluctance in volunteering at this time.
Okay, just so I'm clear. So are you volunteering?
No.
No, okay. I still can't hear with the masks, so.
Mayor, may I?
Yep, go ahead.
we can bring this back up before the council. Will check in with the SOS response team and see if we can't have a commitment of once a month. Is there another way that the city council could participate and still be a team player with SOS? So we can bring that before, and then maybe that might help.
I think somebody needs to represent us over there. It's just, I need to know what the commitment is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to find that out. Okay, any other questions, comments from council? Okay, we'll go to the public. Any input from the public? Questions, comments on action memorandum 22-01?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Bring that back, and then based on the discussion, I'd like to bring this back at maybe the next meeting after we find out a little more information on the needs and time commitments on this position and any other alternative solutions that the city manager recommended. Okay, let's go ahead and jump to item N, city manager's report, and this will be in your laydown. Rachel, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And because it's already 9:13, I'm just gonna try and hit this bullet point. The city auditors are coming to town the beginning of January. There have been some changes made to the way that the city staff team responsible for helping the ferry has been going. So please give that a read. And we have 3 new staff members to the city. Liz Diamant, Aman Coleman, and Cindy Mom. So please welcome them when you see them. Included in the manager's report are the presentation slides for your November 8th meeting with the Alaska Permanent Capital Management Company. They're the firm that's used throughout Alaska to manage permanent funds. I believe they also manage the state of Alaska's permanent fund. So if you have any questions prior to the meeting, after looking at those slides, please let me know, and then I can share that with APCM so then they can have answers on November 8th. But if not, you'll have that presentation before you. ARWA is coming next year to do a sanitary survey. There's been updates regarding the Borough Planning Commission composition, so I'll take a moment here. There's a letter that I wrote in support of an ordinance that 2 assembly members, Lane Chesley and Tyson Cox, have sponsored that would take the Borough Planning Commission, which was initially at 11 seats, and bump it up to 13. It would also say that Seldovia has a guaranteed seat on the Borough Planning Commission, and only a Seldovia resident can have that seat. And also, if the council just wants to submit 1 name to be considered by the borough mayor for appointment to the Borough Planning Commission, that would be fine. So quick backstory, Mayor Pierce recently entertained the idea of combining Seldovia with the city of Homer. So we would be jointly represented because the borough had been running on a rotating seat basis that hadn't been defined through code. And so it's just this informal process that some of the larger cities didn't like the idea of having to sit out, because you have 5 first-class and home rule cities, but only 4 seats for city representation. So Kenai and Soldotna didn't like that they would have to wait a year or 2 years. Same thing with Homer, in order to have a borough appointed representative for their city. And so the mayor wanted to do away with the rotation. Seldovia would essentially lose its guaranteed seat, but it would be combined with Homer. And back in July, Seldovia City Council said, we don't want that. We want a guaranteed seat. And so former Assembly Member Willie Dunn actually got this, I believe, going in motion and partnering with Lane Chesley and Tyson Cox. So I wrote a letter of support for that ordinance. The formal hearing won't happen until December 7th. It's being introduced on the 26th, and I plan to attend. It's just being introduced on the consent agenda, so I don't know if there'll be an opportunity to offer comments, but I'm planning to just go that night. And so if council has any comments you would like me to say at that meeting, please let me know by tonight. We've had updates to our smolt grant for the state. We now can use Chinook smolt instead of silver smolt. And there's also a couple amendments that the city's been interested in the past in making. And when following up with the state, they said you're going to need a legislative amendment. Those changes are repairing the habitat, riparian habitat. The city's been saying that for a few years now because we had a hard time buying silver smolt. We couldn't use the grant funds for their original purpose. And so we just year after year, we're extending the state appropriation of 25 grand because we weren't able to use it. So then staff had the idea of, well, what if we can repair the Soldovia Slough? But that was never formally recognized by the legislature. So if the city wants to do that, we need to have an amendment additionally. And I would work with Councilmember Rojas on these changes. Mike Booz with Fish and Game said that a great use of those funds, if allowed, would be for the city to promote the fishery because there's still not a lot of people that know about the Chinook salmon fishery. The state at one point considered doing away with it. That was actually just, I think, this year. So there could be a benefit in promoting and doing educational materials. So I'm planning to move forward with requesting those changes to the grant. If council has any feedback on that, please let me know. And then I'll incorporate Councilmember Rojas because council appointed her as the Queen of Kings. I forget how it was said. So I'll work with Councilmember Rojas on that. Zach Scribner joined the city as a new refuse collector, and happy to see that we have our other refuse collector in the audience here. I attended the KPED meeting last week in Kenai, and they're doing such great work. I recommend council members look at their website as well as their profile for Soldovia. Next week, I plan to attend the Chamber of Commerce meeting. President Lathine invited me. The Soldovia Chamber of Commerce has invited the Homer Chamber of Commerce to Soldovia. And so when asking what are other ways we can promote that opportunity, I suggested that they also invite the Homer mayor and the Homer city manager so that it's strengthening relationships between our two communities. But also at the meeting, I want to talk about ways that the city can continue to support businesses, ideas that the chamber might have on volunteerism, and ways that the city and the chamber can work together on advertising initiatives. So I'll let you know how that goes. This past Friday night, I hung out with a few other folks to talk about the SACA's, the Incident Command Center. So there's information in there about that. Also, the city clerk helped me in getting information regarding the 2020 census results. So there's information in there. There's the local government conference with AML coming up, and I'm happy to say that we have council members Sweat, Payton, Kennedy, and Swick attending the newly elected officials training November 9th and 10th. That's open to everyone at no cost, and it's on Zoom. So please let us know if you want to do that. And the agenda for that meeting is attached as an enclosure. I invited the state to come do a survey of the historic boardwalk, Bay Street. By doing a survey and having the state document the status, we can then position ourselves for grant funding in the future. The borough is making small steps towards implementing the sales tax increase. They have to get appropriation of funding by the Borough Assembly in order to implement Soldovia's sales tax increase because there's costs associated with the software and the improvements they have to make. There's also the update on the fuel and lube roof that's in the packet if you'd like to read that. The ATV changes are going to go into effect January 1st, so ATVs will be allowed to drive on state roads. However, that does not include snowmobiles or hovercrafts. And so at least there's ATVs that'll be permitted. And then if there's changes on the type D driver's license component that the state is seeking comment on by April 15th. I think that says 2021, but it should say 2022. So if council has any feedback on that, please let me know. ARPA, the city is positioned to receive $66,000 over the course of 2 years. We have 33 now. We're getting 33 the end of next year. The US Senate made changes to ARPA. So now it does, how do they say it? Local governments don't have to use ARPA as lost revenue. If they've received less than 10 million, which we definitely did receive less than that, you could use the entirety of ARPA for normal governmental uses. So before we were restricted, it had to be broadband, water and sewer infrastructure, other COVID related projects. But now there's a more expansive use of that money, which is great. And then really quick, It's great to have the council member photos on the website. Thank you for putting your faces out there in the World Wide Web. It'd be great to have your bios included on the website as well. So if you could take a moment to fill out that information, that'd be awesome. I know Councilmember Swick, you're sideways. We're working on it. We're gonna get you up right there, but we have you up there. And then I wanted to direct council to an enclosure that's in your packet on page. Let's see. Oh, I meant to address this earlier. So please go to page 50 and 51 and the laydown. So these two pages, which are a bright green, that's just to show council the amount of interest we've accrued on AMLIP since 2014. AMLIP is where the Soldovia Permanent Fund is, along with our major maintenance and repair dollars. So from 2014 to 2021, we accrued $41,000 in interest. So over those 7 years, it's $41,000 in interest. If you look at that APCM PowerPoint presentation, over a 10-year period, even if the city took conservative risk, you could be making over $100,000 based on a more aggressive investment strategy. So I just wanted to give you guys that information for comparison. But then, let's see. I wanted to direct your attention to page 71 in the packet. So I just wanted to share with the council that the matter of Hex versus the city of Soldovia was dismissed by the United States District Court. And so there's a copy of the civil action in your packet, and the period for the appeal of that has passed. And there are no additional fees that the city has to pay to our insurer, AMLGIA, since a formal complaint was filed. There's no additional cost. So the case is closed, and there's all actions against the city of Soldovia dismissed. And with that, I'm available for questions. There's a lot of information, and I try to go through it quickly. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate that. Any questions or comments for the manager on the manager's report tonight? She's looking. We'll give her a second here.
So, yeah. Mr.
Yep,
Mayor.
go ahead.
So Rachel, I just, I guess I didn't see this letter from Rosanna's Gardens earlier. So does that mean she will get to use the pavilion next summer?
Oh, you're talking about,
Page 72.
yeah, page 72.
Yes.
No, Miss McGinnis does not want to use city property. She just asked for a letter of support from the city of Soldovia because she's intending to donate produce if she were to get the grant to our senior meals program.
Oh, so when did she change her mind? Because I.
I haven't had a discussion with her where she said she was changing her mind. I just talked to her last week. But I think this is about a different topic.
Right, so these could be two separate things. So Miss McGinnis, through her business, Rosanna's Gardens, is applying for a rural cap, growing rural opportunities for a wellness program grant. And she's actually doing that through Wellspring Consulting.
Oh,
So if
okay.
she were to get that grant, then she could buy the infrastructure needed to do hydroponics and all sorts of things, so that Soldovia could have year-round local produce. What you're talking about.
Okay, yeah,
is-
I got you. Yeah, it's, yeah. So, but on that note, what is happening with that?
So I discussed with you briefly. I'm working on the language for that.
Oh, you are still doing that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so Rose and I's schedule has not coincided and able to meet up to
Okay.
go over
Oh, yeah,
what
that's
their
right.
co-op looks like and what their expectations and what their willingness for some in trade or in kind use of the pavilion would look like.
Okay, that's right. And you and I had touched on that. So continue to include me in that
Sure.
meeting when you guys have it. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thanks and thanks.
Okay, any other additional questions, comments regarding the manager's report?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, no, I'd just like to thank Rachel for a concise and thorough report. She's been very busy, our city manager as usual. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Okay, take us to item O, informational items not requiring action. O1, staff will be working with the city, with the Soldovia City Council to determine a date for a special meeting to discuss the community block development grant and the road grader from NC Machinery for the week of October 25th. Let's see, O2, staff will be working with Soldovia City Council to determine a date for an in-person only newly elected officials training the first week of November 2021. And O3, a work session is being planned regarding the Soldovia Permanent Fund with a presentation from Alaska Permanent Capital Management Company prior to the November 8th, 2021 regular meeting from 4:30 to 5:45 p.m. And item O4, at the November 8th regular meeting, Planning Commission Chair Allison Rain will be providing a summary of the Planning Commission's review of the 2014 Soldovia Comprehensive Plan. So those are informational items not requiring action. Item P, executive session, none tonight. Item Q, council and mayor's comments concerning items not on the agenda. And we'll go ahead and start off with Sweat.
Yes, thanks everybody for your hard work. And thanks to the public who chimed in.
Okay, thank you. Rojas.
Yeah, welcome to our new council members and Harmony. Thanks for coming on board again. Thank you always to everyone who does such hard work making Soldovia move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Kennedy.
I hate to even ask this, but just to help me get up to speed, is there some way somebody could maybe email me a scheduled events that we need to attend in the next month so that I don't miss anything? I do need to schedule another trip up the peninsula, and I just want to make sure that I'm here when I'm supposed to be here. I hate to ask that, but, or can I get it on the website without bothering your time?
Yeah, I mean, you can, I always go to the website too sometimes to check that, but then, I mean, I'm sure Heidi can put it in your email as well, so.
Okay, well, if it's not a big deal, otherwise, I just want to make sure I don't miss something. Thank you for all the work.
Thank you, John. Swick. Are you too tired already? Peyton.
Yep. Thanks for the staff for the presentation, fellow council members for the discussion, and welcome.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you to the staff. You guys came through like champs, like you always do. Appreciate it. And Heidi is your gal for updating your schedule. She keeps track of, keeps me reined in all the time. Yeah. All right. Appreciate it. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, George. Okay, yep, and same thing. Thank you to the staff for preparing tonight's packet. Thank you to the public that participated, and welcome to our 2 new members and 1 returning member. Appreciate everything. And next meeting will be held on November 8th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn with a second. Any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
I think we're ready to go home.